wanted to start off with a message you'll probably hear a lot today, and hopefully you hear a lot throughout the year. Thank you very much for everything you do for the CGA at Taiga events, all the other golf associations you work for throughout the year. Um, we say it all the time, and it sounds like a cliche, but we could not do all of the events at the level that we do them without all of your help. So thank you very much for all you do for us. So we'll talk a little bit about the expectations of what we're looking for from you all. As you saw on your way in, we'll provide you with a shirt, hat, name badge, books, all the study guides that you can use and help put you to sleep at night if you have that problem. But we'll do everything we can to have you prepared to be rules official out on the course. We like to give an annual thank you gift. Sometimes we try and mix in a couple thank you gifts, but hope you enjoy the bag tag and the shoe bag this year. And we are always on the lookout for new tee gifts and thank you gifts. So if you see things at other events, other associations, please let us know. We're always on the hunt for new thank you gifts. So when you sign up for events, we like to communicate with you as well as we can. You'll hear from the official in charge for each event that you sign up from about 3 to 7 days in advance. In the kind of shoulder quieter seasons, we end up in the 7-day side of that. As it gets into summer and things get a little crazy, we usually end up closer on the 3-day in advance. But if it's getting close and you are signed up for an event and haven't heard from anybody, please let me know. 99% chance that the event still is on and the OIC is just swamped. But let me know. And we'll make sure we get you all the information that you need for the event. So we have our Facebook group going. If you have not joined, please do so. We like to throw in usually PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, media that shows rule situations. Selfishly, it's my favorite way to learn and remember things. You have a video or a picture of a famous player you can remember and say, oh yeah, that's the Rory ruling, that's the Dustin Johnson ruling. So try and throw those in there when interesting things happen. If you have something come up at a tournament, please don't be shy. I think most of the posts in the group are CGA staff, and that's fine. But please don't be shy. And if you have something come up in a tournament, CGA event, or otherwise something just crazy happens in your regular round of golf, bring it up, and we'll talk through it. Kind of throw around all the different rule situations and what would apply to it. And it's a good way to remember. Help you remember the rules. So expenses are tax deductible for all of your expenses when volunteering with the CGA. So we do not reimburse directly for the expenses that you incur from the CGA. We always provide you at least lunch. We strive to make it a good lunch, not always possible, but always try and get cookies. I know that's always a big hit. But we always get you lunch. We have our annual rules training seminar. We try and get you the information about USGA rule school as early as possible. I know those fill up, and it's great to have that one here at Pinehurst this year. So try and get as many people in. It was great to see so many faces there. And we took a picture. It looked like there were 3/4 of the people at rule school were CGA staff or volunteers. So it was great to see. And I'll do special study resources throughout the year. Charlie Marks always does a good job putting together kind of a one-page match play, one-page stroke play cheat sheet that we'll post on the rules officials page. Any kind of study resources, anything to keep the rules stuck in your mind. So we don't have special golf privileges. We did get to play a little bit yesterday at Pine Wild. So hope for those of you that got to play yesterday, you enjoyed it. It wasn't too cold. Weather turned out better than expected, at least. So appreciate you guys playing, and a thank you to Pine Wild as well for taking good care of us again. So our rules officials reimbursement program is still a work in progress. So as you know, last year, if you don't know, last year we had a system where we paid about $25 per day, and of course we're going to blame it on the IRS. They didn't like that system very much. So we ended up in the situation where if you worked enough days, and we appreciate all of you who worked a lot of days, but if you got over $600, we had to send you a W-9. There's also issues with legislation that I just learned about, called the Volunteer Protection Act. If you get more than $500 from an association that you volunteer for, you lose a lot of the protection, liability protection that you would otherwise have under this act. So we'll mostly blame it on them. So we have a new plan. So going forward, we're gonna copy the program that the USGA committee uses with their national committee members. Georgia State Golf Association does something similar as well. So the original plan was kind of framed as a education reimbursement. Loosely, we never actually asked to see what a receipt from Rule School or anything like that. So we're just going to go all in on the education aspect of it, and our setup is going to be once in every 4-year rule cycle. So for those of you who don't know, every 4 years, the rules of golf are updated, refreshed. So it was in 2019, again in 2023. The next one will be in 2027. So we're in the 2023 to 2026 window right now. So once in every 4-year rule cycle, the CGA will reimburse the cost of attending USGA Rule School up to $500. So we don't want to go over that $500 maximum to keep the Volunteer Protection Act protections in there. Rule School is $500 at the moment, so if it creeps up a little bit over the next couple of years, we won't be able to reimburse the full cost. We're gonna cap it at $500. So in order to be eligible, you must work 10 or more tournament days for the CGA in the same calendar year you attend Rule School. So kind of two different options. In the years when the USGA has Rule School at the end of the year in November, December, you could work your 10 days throughout the year, go to Rule School in November, December, send me your receipt for Rule School, and we'll reimburse it that way. Or if you go to Rule School at the beginning of the year, like a lot of us did this year, January, February, March, go to Rule School, work your 10 days throughout that calendar year, and then send me your receipt after you have your 10 days, and we'll get you reimbursed kind of whenever that is throughout the year. So happy to talk. Grab me if you have any questions about that. I apologize for the back and forth on it, but I think this lands in a good spot where we're encouraging as much as we can Rule School, becoming as good of an official as you can, and we're keeping all of the government entities happy at the same time, and making it a little bit easier on Kim Jett, our incredible HR and check writing attendant. So what do we expect from you? We want you to be on time and attend all tournaments that you have signed up for, with that caveat that we understand life always gets in the way. And with everything in your life, I know CGA, being a CGA rules official, is not at the top of that. So anything comes up, family issue, work issue, car issue, whatever it is, just let us know as soon as you can. It can be before we send out assignments. It can be after we send out assignments. It can be 6 o'clock in the morning that morning. Just let us know as soon as you can so we can kind of adjust and get everyone in the position to help the players as much as possible. So we ask you to be dressed neatly and present yourself in a professional manner. You are an extension of the CGA and its staff. Hopefully, every time you see CGA staff at the tournament, we're fulfilling the same standard. So as much as you can, we want everyone to be in the white CGA shirt, hat, and then khaki, navy, or gray pants. So no shorts at CGA events, please. For women, we have the white CGA shirt, hat, khaki, navy, or gray pants, shorts, or skirts. So a little more lenient for the ladies, but we have a picture of everyone showing what you all hopefully look like. So a little bit of, we can't give all the info yet. Not everything is finalized, but we're also working on a apparel partnership this year. So hopefully outfitting CGA staff, officials, all of our teams, and executive committee. So we've kind of, as you know, kind of a hodgepodge of whatever shirts we can, whatever hats we can. So we're working towards a more standardized uniform that we will relay to you as soon as we can. Hopefully we get that out to you soon. So we talked about being a face of the CGA. A lot of times at the golf course, the players don't even realize that you don't work for the CGA. A lot of times people come up to me and say, "Hey, the guy that works for you, that was the starter, was great." And we have to explain to him that actually he's a volunteer, but appreciate the kind words. So a lot of times you are the only ones that the players will see, sometimes even till scoring. So as much as you can, you're the face of the CGA. Courteous to host facility staff. As you know, the boom in golf the last couple of years has made our scheduling difficult. So any kind of advantage we can have when the club is getting together to plan their tournament schedule for the next year, we don't want anyone to say, let's not do the CGA event. Those people were jerks. So we want as much of them to say CGA staff was awesome. Their volunteers were great. We'd love to have them back. So the official in charge will send you out those assignments, and they do tend to change a lot. But as much as we can, and until they change, we're going to stick to those assignments and communicate to everybody around you where you're at. And when we have lunch breaks, anything like that, you need to go in for whatever reason, to communicate around those assignments. And we're called a committee for a reason. We're working as a team. All our tournament officials are trying to make that environment as productive and as professional for the players as we can. So I'll run through a couple of our websites that hopefully you are familiar with, and if not, be a good introduction. We have a good amount of new rules officials here, so appreciate all of you that are here for the first time. So if you haven't seen this before, it's our rules officials webpage from carolinasgolf.org. You just go to that competitions tab at the top and rules of golf, and it's under there. So our top bullet point is our schedule. So that's every event that the CGA, well, almost every event. I think we have a few more to add. We're about 99% of the way there. Every event that the CGA is running this year that we would like to have rules officials at. And when we talked about our 10 tournament days, the 10 tournament definition of tournament day is anything that's on that schedule, along with the USGA qualifiers that are in South Carolina. So as we are the Allied Golf Association, allied with the USGA, technically USGA qualifiers in South Carolina are CGA events, even though they're almost always run by the South Carolina Golf Association or Women's South Carolina Golf Association. So anything on the CGA schedule plus South Carolina USGA qualifiers will count towards your 10 days. We have bullet points there for the Women's South Carolina Golf Association rules official schedule and the SCGA schedule. They're always looking for officials as well. Have a lot of events in Myrtle Beach and the upstate that a lot of times are close to Charlotte, or if you're in Wilmington, easy enough rides. So as much as you can help them out too, we appreciate it. We have our bullet points there for the training that you are currently at. So soon we will, so we're recording the presentation today, put it up on YouTube, and those bullet points will become the YouTube videos that you can, if you really love today's presentation, can always come back and watch it. Or for those of us that couldn't make it today, have those up. So we have our YouTube links from last year, and then we have a lot of information as you scroll down on the page. There's more bullet points, a lot about the study guides I was talking about, links to the USGA rules quizzes, all those kind of things to keep you sharp with the rules. So when you click on the schedule, it will take you to this. So you're using your Golf Genius profile to sign up for any events. I know some of you like to sign up for every single event you're going to go to throughout the year and have it all mapped out, and that's fine. Some of you like to sign up closer to the event when you know you can attend, and that's fine too. So whenever you're ready, click on the hyperlink at the top, register for the event. For multi-day events, there'll be divisions you can sign up for. You can sign up for one, multiple, or all the days. So for multi-day events, please don't feel like you have to be there every single day. If you can only do 2 out of the 3 days, 2 out of the 4 days, 1 out of the 3 days, whatever it is, we'd prefer to have you there as much as we can. Don't feel like if I can't be there for all days, I'm not going to sign up at all. And similarly, if you know you have something in the afternoon, your appointment, you have to pick somebody up, whatever the case may be, but you'd love to be there in the morning, help us start, get everyone started, and then have to head out. We'd love to do it. We'd love to have you for that too. Don't feel like you have to be there from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. just because you're signed up for the day. So had some awesome participation numbers this past year. We had our highest ever number of officials worked. So we had 153 officials work CGA events in 2024 and worked a total of 1,206 days. So thank you very much. Give yourself a round of applause. So we appreciate all that time. We had 44 officials work 10 or more tournament days, and we have a few notables that we always like to highlight. We have Roger Lyerly here, worked 31 days. Thank you, Roger. We have Bruce Nemeth, who's not here, worked 43 days. And then our all-star, David Kale, worked 93 days. So I don't want to put these up to make you feel bad or to think that this is what we expect by any means. Just wanted to highlight just some of the people who really gone all out on their commitment to working for the CGA or volunteering with the CGA. So please don't feel like we're trying to peer pressure you or anything. Whatever amount of days you can help us with, we very much appreciate. And one thing I wanted to talk about are 1,206 days. So selfishly, I work a lot of our USGA qualifiers, and I think if we did statistics on how many officials we get per event, I would be the winner. And I appreciate all of you signing up for a lot of our events and making it easy for me. But at the same time, we end up with a lot of events running on the same week, and there'll be times where we have 12 officials at one event and we have a tournament down the road, and we have 2 officials at the other event. So we don't want to get to the point where we are telling you which events to work, but just be cognizant of how many officials are already signed up for the event, and if there's other events in the immediate area or a day or two away that would also work for your schedule. And it really will help you as well too. When there's 14 officials at an event, and you're just sitting on one hole, you're going to get a lot less work done. The best way to become a better official is talk to players, give rulings, talk about pace of play. And if there's 2 of you at the tournament, you're going to be doing a lot more of that. You'll be a little more tired at the end of the day, but you'll get a lot more out of it. So we'd love to grow the officials worked and the days worked number, but we also want to work this year on spreading it out so that it's a little more even, and we have better, more flatter participation across all the different types of events we run. So we want to, this year going forward, start appreciating and representing the years of service that you all have worked for the CGA. We've always done a good job of figuring out how many days you worked each year, but a lot of times we've lost track of how long a lot of you have been doing this. Not to make people feel old, but more as a reflection of a thank you over the years. So got a little exercise. So if you have worked more than 5 years with the CGA, please stand up. That's awesome. All right, hold on. No, stay up. So if you have worked more than 10 years, please stay standing. All right. And if you have worked more than 20 years, please stay standing. All right. Thank you, Penn. Thank you, Mr. Dosick. Appreciate all your time. So we're gonna do a better job of I'm gonna send out a survey after we're done with our Columbia seminar next week with a bunch of different questions, but one of them is going to be, what year did you start working with the CGA? So we can track it, and we want to do a better job of reflecting milestones and just the amount of, not just the time per year, but the amount of years that you've given to the CGA. So like I said, when you're ready to sign up, whether it's sign up for the whole year or sign up as you get a little closer, to register on the CGA website with your Golf Genius account. Everyone should be, if you signed up for this, you should be good to go as a CGA rules official. But if you ever have trouble with the sign up process for any reason, just let me know. We'll troubleshoot it and get you ready. So you can register for one event. You can register for all of your events, however you want to set up your schedule. You'll get a confirmation email from each one. If you do not get a confirmation email, that means you are not signed up. They do oftentimes go to junk or spam because they come from a Golf Genius generic address. So the first one you get, if it goes to spam, just add it to trusted sender or not spam, whatever you have on your email. And then you'll get all those, and you can keep those as a record too. And we have registration instructions on the rules officials page as well. But if you need any help, please let me know. So we're going to talk about our senior rules officials program in a moment. But this year, so we're going to have the Carolinas Amateur, the U.S. Women's Open Qualifier, our U.S. Open Final Qualifier, and our U.S. Amateur Final Qualifier are going to be invitation only for our senior rules officials. It's just kind of a little bit of an encouragement for those of you that are close or at that level. And we want to make sure at those specific events we have our most senior and experienced rules officials giving our rulings with everything that's on the line at those events. So if you are not a senior rules official and you are eligible, I'll give you some more information. So throughout the year, we'll get requests from other golf associations, conferences, college tournaments that need rules officials, and we created the program to help kind of narrow down our list of who we're going to send these requests to. So it's optional. Do not, even if you're eligible, you do not want to be a part of it, that's totally fine. And it's optional in that you don't need to do it in order to work for the CGA. Some of the organizations, once you become a senior rules official, you'll start getting emails from me about as we receive the emails, I'll send them out to you. It comes in a little template. One of them is compensation. Some organizations will pay you per day, some do not. Some just kind of the standard lunch. And then again, not a requirement. When you get those emails, I'll copy the tournament the official, whoever is leading that event, and you'll just reply straight back to them that you can do it, and then it'll be you and that person communicating. You don't need to include us on those communications. So we wanted to make sure we were sending for the outside events, sending our officials that we have a advanced or at least advanced level of rules knowledge and have officiating experience with the CGA that we feel comfortable sending you out to kind of represent the CGA. We also want to, a lot of these events, you're going to be the OIC. At some of these events, you're going to be the only one at the tournament. So we want to make sure everyone knows what they're getting into and is comfortable in that program. So we have 42 CGA senior rules officials currently. I think we added, actually probably need to update that. I think we added 3 or 4 last week. So you will get a new name badge with the senior rules official on the bottom. Start getting emails from me. And our requirements to do so is you must attend a USGA rules workshop in the last 4 years, receive a 75 or higher on the 100 question test, or a 70 or higher on the 80 question test. So that advanced level, and work at least 5 CGA conducted tournament days in the previous year. And same standard of what we consider tournament days for that. And you also must attend the CGA rules official training seminar within the last 4 years. So we all checked that off today. So USGA, same thing. USGA qualifiers in North and South Carolina count, non-CGA conducted events, and the other senior rules officials events that we send out do not count towards that total. The other way you can do it is if you're a member of the USGA committee and have scored 90 or higher on the 100 question test, you're welcome to apply to be part of the program. So we have a PDF, a pretty simple application form on the rules officials page. You can grab it there. You can send me an email. I'll send it to you. No cost to apply. And again, to stress, optional. Don't feel like you need to do it. And but it's certainly there for you if you would like. So I will hand it over. I'm sure all of you know at this point, or if you missed Jack's farewell speech last night, we have a new executive director starting this year. So really excited to welcome Andy Priest.
If your opponents are blowing up like mine, we should start with 5.7 this morning, apparently, with the severe thunderstorm coming our way. But good morning. Awesome to be back home. It's amazing to see this movie. This program was my baby back in the day. So it is great to see what Chris and the team has done to continue this on. And when he asked me this last week, he's like, "Hey, do you mind doing a section?" I was like, full transparency, it's been a while since I've done this. And so he's like, "Oh, don't you worry, it'll be like riding a bike." So I started looking through the slides, and I went, "Wait a minute, I wrote these slides." So yeah, so Wolf, you're right. I think I can handle this today. But seriously, I want to echo, thank you for what you do. I mean, you're the backbone of our organization. We have a tremendous staff, but we can't be everywhere and do everything ourselves. You make us who we are, and we can't do it without you. So seriously, from bottom of my heart, our staff, our leadership that's in here, President Riddle, right there, thank you seriously for what you do for us. All right, so I stood behind the podium last night, so I'm sorry, I'm going a little TED talk here with the wireless mic. But duty at a CGA event as an official, rules officials, you got to possess good knowledge of the rules of golf. Main responsibility is to assist players around the golf course. I mean, that's our job. We want to help the players get a ball in play, answer the questions that keep play moving along within the rules of golf. Pace of play monitoring. Y'all done this a while. It's 90% of our time is spent on pace of play. It's hours of boredom and moments of terror out there sometimes. But pace of play monitoring is kind of helps you pass the day a little bit. Watch the flag stick in time and hole times and those kinds of things. But that's one thing to be mindful of is monitoring pace of play. Spotters. You get some tricky holes, maybe a starting hole where we need spotters just to help get play going out there. So we definitely, that's a very big part of what we do. If you're on the starting tee, Chris, looking to this, you may be you're the first person they probably see from our organization that day. So you set the tone of their experience that they're about to have. And it's very important because if you give them wrong information off the bat, we got issues throughout the rest of the day. So being a starter is incredibly important. It's a lot of responsibility. And then scoring, we have procedures. We're going to put in the my local rule this year with the policy with the 15 minutes additional at our competition, which I guess we'll get into later on today. Sorry if I spoiled something there. Course setup. Tournament day setup is extremely important. Our IFC from the staff usually we'll set things up prior to the event, but more than the event, we may request some help from you, especially setting tee markers on the golf course and just double checking hole locations because sometimes they don't get moved or get cut in the wrong spot. Again, when setting tee markers, verify with the staff of those locations and identification. Verify hole locations. Use the data of the hole location sheet and confirm that the information is correct. Make sure the orientation. Sometimes I've had a lot of officials go out and check hole locations. Like, oh, this is not right, and so hopefully we'll teach you like, hey, here's the center line, and this is where it is. Versus getting out there and you're thinking, okay, this is off a little bit. Whole evaluation. You could be the last member of a committee to be out there checking bunkers. Sometimes there's things that we may not get out to. Like you have overnight weather. Possibly we can't get everywhere. So the extra set of eyes that you provide to us and the information you give us is incredibly invaluable for us to address some situations before they become an issue, possibly. Sometimes we have playoffs. If you've been in a USGA qualifier, I can almost guarantee you that we're going to have a playoff. And depending on what we're playing off for, it could be a spot, it could be an alternate position, but we do need playoff officials there as well. EVAC. Going back to we would have blown the horn a long time ago this morning. But this is one of the biggest things that we do that's so important to evac the golf course and do it in a professional manner, but in a timely manner. Most of our events, especially the amateur level, we're in carts, but our junior events, they're walking, or USC qualifiers that could be walking. So, we try to put evac plans in place. Junior events, spectator carts kind of help with that. But make sure, just from a sheer insurance standpoint, try not to have people in the back of your cart. You know, our friends in Georgia had a tragic accident with an official that fell off the back of their cart and passed away last 2 years ago. So it can be dangerous, and that's why I stress you, you know, try to stay off the back of the golf carts. You know, when you are signed as a referee in a match, you know, you're there to make sure the match is played in accordance with the rules of golf. And, you know, you're part of the match, so you're in there determining, you know, who's away, answering rules questions, you know, for trying to prevent penalties from happening. And, you know, so you're there, but if you're not assigned to it, then you have very limited, you know, duties as a rules official if you're not a referee in the match. You know, you're really just monitoring base play, those kinds of things. But, you know, unless you're called in for a ruling, but when you're a referee, you know, you really got to know what you're doing in that. And, you know, that's why you're here. We're going to start teaching you, you know, how to do that, best practices. All right, so there you go. Few photos there. I love the hiding behind the tree in the cart. That's a good spot, you know, especially in the danger zone if you're spotting. You know, so you know you never know what you may be called into at a ruling. You know, this is always a great quote from Richard Tufts. You know, be firm and positive, but take plenty of time. You know, we have the ability in golf to not have to throw a flag, make a decision immediately. You know, we can confer, we can consult, we can take our time, we can gather facts, we can talk to the players, talk to, you know, any other caddies or spectators, and get information to get to where we need to be. You know, so a referee without pants is better equipped than a referee without a rules book. Well, I think most of you now know, you know, your rules book's here on this device, and even USGA now is letting you use your app for taking the exam. So that was one of our biggest feedbacks to them was like, you know, when we're in the field, a lot of people are now referencing this versus, you know, the official guide. So I thought that was a great change this year. But consulting a rules book is not a sign of weakness at all. You know, even if you're certain of a rule, you know, it helps to read and show it to the player. And I can tell you, so many times a player does not believe you, and when you show it to them in prints, they're like, okay. And, you know, so there's no problem with that. You know, we want to make sure the players understand, you know, what the ruling is. And Andy Priest giving you a ruling, it's the rules of golf, this is what it says, and we're going to apply it as it's written. You know, if a player questions the ruling, offer to call another official in for a second opinion. So I'll give you a story. I got to officiate the 23 Masters, and I was working the fifth hole in round 2. Bubba Watson hooked his second shot around, hit the observation stand right at the green, kicked it far right. And I'm like, oh crap. So I go zipping up there, and I beat Bubba there. And his ball is under a tree. I mean, it's in this gnarly lie. I mean, he's got no play at the flagstick. And I knew he was going to ask for TIO interference ruling. And so I get up there and I back away. I'm already assessing it. So I back away, and I knew that Bubba was not going to like my answer that I was about to give him. And on top of that, it's hard to tell Bubba Watson, I don't think you can hit that shot either. So I had, talking about second opinion, I had our rover, Dave Donnelly from the PGA Tour. I said, hey, Double D, that's what we call him, Double D, come over here. I don't think Bubba's gonna like what I got to tell him here. So Bubba, you know, gets up there, he's looking at the ball, looking at the flagstick, looks down again, and then he goes, okay, so I got this observation stand in my way here, and I go in and said, yes, Bubba, you do, but there is a, you know, exception to the rule that, you know, it's, you know, clearly reasonable that you get the ball there, that, you know, you're not entitled to relief. And he said, so you're not gonna give me relief? I said, no, I am not. I was like, I'm happy to call in the second pitch. He was like, no. So if I hit the shot and it hits the observation stand, what happens there? And I was like, it hits observation stand. So I'm not giving you relief here. So he's like, so, we go back and forth a little bit, but finally, Bubba had one shot. It was to turn and play it to the front of the green. And sure enough, as soon as he, offered a second opinion, he said, no, thank you. And what does he do? Instead of playing this way, he turns and hits the shot to the front of the green, which is the only shot that he actually had. So, what I'm saying is it's having a second opinion, offering a second opinion, it kind of can calm the situation down in a lot of cases. So, I may have got a few boos from some of the gallery that I didn't get relief, but that's okay. But anyway, thought you'd like to hear that little story. So, in general, players are under tension to play well. So we don't add to that. Again, we're there to help them, try to diffuse situations. We try to be friendly while maintaining that professional demeanor. And, whether you're at the Masters or whether you're at the North Carolina Junior Girls, I mean, it's just players and rulings and situations. And, we're always trying to address it the same way. If you know their name, they love, that little personal interaction. If you know the player's name, say, hey, Joe, what can I help you with? And, that goes a long way. No one should be excited to get a penalty. That's not what we do here. We're not, I gotcha. That's not what we do. We're there really to help the players, get around the golf course. Certainly drive your cart to the area where the situation is. And then get out, walk to the last 10 yards. You just don't want to roll up, ball's right there, man, no relief and speed off. That's not what we're gonna do. Get close, walk over, get the ruling and move along. It's not drive-through rulings here. Okay. Don't get rulings sitting in your car to drive by. Communicate over the radio when a ruling is done. We always, you get the call like, hey, there's a ruling needed on 6, and so someone comes and say, hey, I got it. Sometimes it's like a speed chase. It seems like I got it. No, I'm gonna get it. It's like a race to get to the ruling. But whoever gets there first, let them handle it. But once the ruling's clear, certainly get on the radio to say, hey, ruling on 6 is clear. That way everybody knows that we're good and we're moving on there. And obviously call the official charge if any problems. We got your back out there. So, as you're a member of the committee, at most events, station on the course of their play, be available on the course to give rulings. And says players, again, you want to get in a spot where you can see. Anybody here been hit by a golf ball? Yeah, I mean, hard hat zones out there sometimes. So you got to have a head on a swivel in some places that we officiate. And so make sure, you get yourself out of the way, but where you can see, but yet protect yourself. So there's a lot to think through where you park your golf cart sometimes. And sometimes you got to park your cart and just kind of, stand out and walk out and kind of hide behind a tree if need be. Be visible while being invisible. It's kind of what all that means. Cart placement and movement is definitely important. I always say, when the players move, you move. Otherwise, if the players are getting into their shot, you kind of sit still and wait till that opportune moment to move. All right. Going backwards is always a preferred method. So that way you're always driving towards play and you see what's going on instead of riding with play. That's always a good best practice. Sometimes use the windshield if need be. Summertime, it's Friday night. I'm not going to want that windshield up unless it's raining. Be careful around the corners. You may have players ready to play. Also, you must wait for a player. Stop your cart. We just don't creep along because you know how those carts can get. Sometimes they start creeping, beep, 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 and you end up being more of a distraction than you realize. Again, just trying to be out of a line of sight of play. We want to be available to players if they need help or not. So visible that we don't disturb them. So we inconspicuously conspicuous. I think it's kind of a good term there. All right, so officials are encouraged to assist players in searching for golf balls. Boy, I tell you what, that 3 minutes goes quick now, doesn't it? You know, the old 5 minute rule, it seemed like it took forever. Now with 3 minutes, it's like, boom, that ball's lost quickly now. You know, when you go in and help with a search, you're the timer, you know? And what do? You're usually not there when they actually start the search. So what happens? You get there and go, hey, how long have we been searching here? And what do they always say? We just started. I mean, that's what they're going to say. You know, so you say, okay, all right, I'm going to start the clock and keep you posted on time. So as you're going through that 3 minutes, you know, let them know where they stand on the time. So it's transparent to everybody. That's not just search. Okay, 3 minutes is up. You know, let them know, hey, we got 2 minutes left. We got 1 minute left. We got 30 seconds left. I mean, give the information to the players so everybody's on the same page there. All right, so however, in the case when a player's played a provisional ball, he may not want to find the original ball. So let the players lead what they want to do and join in the search only if the players begun the search. You remember, you know, Phil Mickelson, the famous one back several years ago. You know, he didn't want to find the ball, and the marshal found it, and he had to identify it. You know, so it turned into a thing. You know, that was a good use case of. You know, sometimes players do not want to find the ball, especially if they hit provisional, they're in a good place already with it. They may not want to go find that original ball. You know, rules officials do not necessarily the final say in deciding questions of fact. Then players should be afforded a second opinion, which we've already touched on. You know, don't approach the player unless, you know, asked. You know, with some exceptions, you know, we got a pretty good list here. You know, we're trying to prevent players from breaching a rule. You know, so anytime we can stop that from happening, we want to do that. You know, also sometimes you need to just be clear, especially with starting tee, if a player's gonna play a provisional ball, what that intent is. You know, so just go ahead and ask them. You know, say, hey, you know, this is provisional ball, right? You know, so just make sure we got the, you know, the verbalization on that. You know, you certainly got to act on any penalty or that you observe or has been reported to you. You know, those are always the tough ones. Timing on rulings, as y'all know, dictates what we can and can't do on some things. So, you know, sometimes the ruling, we could need to address it before they tee off on the next hole. And sometimes if they've gone across the Rubicon there, we may not be able to help them. Or sometimes there's rulings where they play 2 balls, which is another tool that officials have to play 2 balls if we're not sure and we need to get more information. You know, hey, for us, if the players can play 2 balls to protect their rights, but as officials, we can have them play 2 balls so we can figure out what exactly we should be doing in this situation potentially. You know, we always jump in on case of play reasons. You know, we ask how long. We talk about, you know, Saturday. Oh, we just started looking, you know, for the ball here. You know, if a player looks lost or unsure on the golf course, that's a pretty good one. If a player looks lost or unsure on the golf course, Wolf, where did that come from? We got people just wandering out there now. Where am I? But I will say, you know, sometimes you do see, if you get the golf courses where it's crisscrossing courses, sometimes they end up going to the wrong hole potentially. If you see that, you know, stop them, but hey, no, no, it's that way, not that way. Okay, radio discipline. Well, you know, we've kind of gotten away from the radio and we now use what we call relay devices for the most part. Unless we still use regular radios. Some, okay. All right, so we got a mixed bag here. We got the old, you know, that's the bad thing about the new relay devices, the little hockey puck looking things. You can't point with it. You know, that's the one thing we lost with those. You know, the radio and the antenna, that was, you know, right there. That's where we're going to drop the ball. So, you know, use the radio to report all rulings to the OIC. You know, obviously keep that radio with you with an earpiece in. You know, the technology is getting better and better. That's what I love about the relay devices. We can Bluetooth to them. So trying to get this, you know, getting away from wires. That, yeah, to be honest, when I officiate tournaments, I get to use a wired earpiece to drive nuts. You know, so I love the Bluetooth. Keep conversations, concise on topic, non-essential radio chatter kept to a minimum. Another good thing about the relay device is they time you out after 25 seconds. So you can't go on and on and on, so you're gonna get cut off. So you have your, what you need to say prepped already. Initial transmissions should include, who it's for and who's calling. Relay information, needed if people can't be reached on the radio. Be mindful of other radio locations, golf shop. Not everybody has an earpiece, and sometimes, the radios are just not plugged in, and, everybody in the world can hear the conversation. So we try to, be respectful of, keeping that in mind. You never know who's listening. In areas with limited radio coverage, we do have an app, Zello, that we will use again this year. I have never used Zello. Hopefully we won't have to use it. Hopefully we got a good cell phone coverage wherever we go, but if not, we do have a backup. Okay, when making a ruling, most often the first order of business should be the determination of the facts. And that's the hardest thing sometimes to get. And because those of you who've done this a while, you talk to player A, they're going to give you a set of information. You're going to go to player B, you're going to get a different set of information. Then player C is going to say, I didn't see anything. So that's how it's going to go out in the field. But that's where we got to put our, officiating hat on and really think through and sift through the information about that's pertinent. It's like taking the rules exam. What matters and what doesn't. They'll fill your head with all kinds of, oh yeah, we're on 7, it's a dog leg right, and this and that, and you're just like, let's get to what happens, on that. So you got to parse through some of the information. So get everyone involved to agree on the facts before announcing it. But again, a lot of times A versus B, 1-on-1, and then C takes the fifth. That's kind of how it seems to happen. And then in most cases, we're going to end up siding with the player. But, if we get more information, we want to gather all that as much as possible. Be wary of rules requests containing few or no facts at all. Sometimes we have to dig a little deeper to ask questions and find out, what happened. And, these kind of step back and say, hey, tell me what happened. What can I help you with? What happened here? And then just let them talk and just listen to it. And again, that's where you got to start parsing out fact and fiction and what matters and all that. So, a sample ruling here, my ball moves is 1 stroke penalty, right? Well, as a rules official, how would you answer this? It's a pretty loaded question here. It kind of depends. Where was the ball when it moved? It's accidental move on the putting green. No penalty, right? Searching for the ball moves, no penalty. So, there's no hard and fast answer. So that's why you got to find out, where was the ball when it moved? Who was involved? Were you or what were you doing around the ball when it did? So we got to find out a lot of information for a very simple question. It can have a lot of different things to it. What we can say, a good rules official is one who checks their ego at the front entrance, but has confidence in their ability to officiate. We're part of the team here. That's the thing. We're all teammates and we're all working together on this. You bring a willingness to learn at each event. It's experience plays key role in being a good rules official. There's 2 rules officials, right? There's ones that hasn't made mistakes, and then there's ones that will. That's how it is. We've all been there. I'll tell a story myself. And going back to my intern. So I was an intern for the CGA in 1997. Ray and Vicky, many of you know Ray. My first day on the job. Ray, we're at what's now Mid-South Club. Pinehurst Plantation back then. Ray puts me as a spotter on, is it number 5, that's the downhill par 4 with the lake. Is that right? All right, so I'm there, player hits it, fairway, and then he hooked to the lefty. He hooks his shot just, and it kind of crossed over the edge of the green up there and into the lake. He goes, hey, I'm going to play a provisional ball. I was like, oh, okay, great. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I would do. So if you remember Bud Schulpe, God bless Bud and Alan Schulpe, but Bud comes by and I start telling him this story. I thought, oh yeah, it's had a ruling, provisional ball goes, oh geez, no. And so he goes zipping off and that's the correct rule. So first day, intern, bad ruling, right? I'll raise my hand on that. So, but again, it goes back to if I just got on the radio, quickly learned a lesson right off the bat. Good officials, one that spends the necessary time to learn and understand the rules of golf. It's amazing the amount of assets and education that's available now. If you go back to the early days, I mean, this was it, or you go to a rules workshop, it's really, you kind of said, read the book and figure it out. Now there's so many interactive sites, and the USGA is doing a phenomenal job, the app, Road and Rules Official, so you got all kinds of different things out there that can really help all of us become better officials and keep us sharp on the rules of golf. A great demeanor. We always talk about the bedside manner. You can either escalate a ruling really quick by just how you interact with it, or you can diffuse it just by a good bedside manner. And that's what we want to achieve: good bedside manner with talking to the players, because you are representing us at the end of the day. You go back here to David Price, one of the classic, having to share bad news. This is when Dustin Johnson, grounded his club and what was the bunkers at Whistling Straits that year, PGA Championship. So David, had to give Dustin the bad news, and sometimes that's just how you can tell. I mean, y'all remember? I mean, that was a tough thing for David, but it was tough for rules of golf. You remember? I mean, people are just blowing up the rules of golf and how buried is and blah blah blah. But PGA America, to their credit, started showing pictures of over the urinal, said every sandy area here is a bunker. So but anyway, you gotta sometimes you gotta have some kid gloves on as you're delivering good news and bad. We're all about trying to get it right. Accuracy is the key to officiating. Confer with fellow officials. I can tell you, when I get the chance, when I work USGA championships or Augusta National, I know I've got the best rules officials in the world on the other end of that radio, and that takes the pressure off. So don't look at it as a bad thing to get on the radio and confer a ruling, because I have done it myself. We want to get it right. That's what it's about. Because sometimes your mind you just blank on some things, and it's okay to get on the radio and consult with others. That's what we're there. We're a committee, we're a team to get these things right. And again, most inaccurate rulings can be prevented by just simply getting on the radio and double checking. We call it practice preventative, officiating. We have the right and obligation to advise the players with respect to the rules when it seems necessary. For a ball teed outside the teeing area, so if when you're starting, I know we'll get into this a little bit later about where to stand and all this and that, but you want to be in a position where you can tell if a player is in front. And I've got the opportunity to start at the US Amateur the last 3 years, and you're behind the podium. But sometimes you see those tee markers and you see the player teed up. Sometimes you have to kind of give it one of those just to make sure that they are within the teeing area. Make sure we got the order plate correct, announcing and marking procedural requirements, as well. If they're going to lift their ball, if we're going to replace the ball, we always have to mark and lift it, so we got to put it back on that spot. When cleaning balls not permitted, we've got some limitations there. When a ball marker has not been returned to its original position, so if you're refereeing a match and somebody moves their ball marker over, you got to keep these things in mind, make sure that that player moves the ball marker back. But it's not our job to babysit the players either. We don't micromanage it. But if you see stuff, go ahead and jump in and help prevent something that could be an issue where we could stop it. Now, my favorite slide here, Judge Schmelz, most people are relatively pleasant at events. Keyword there being most. However, we do run into some folks that are not so pleasant. I like using the term, if you remember the movie Roadhouse, be nice until it's time not to. But we try to be nice all the time whenever we can. So we run into people that, depending on the player, the situation, players sometimes just don't get along within their groups. And that could be a thing, especially getting scoring and, they're barking at each other, on that. You get caddies. Caddies are usually the mouthiest, of all the groups. Parents, spectators, they want to jump in and give their opinions and this, that. So sometimes we have to just separate out like, hey, look, let me work with the player here. And, just between us. Becoming upset, frustrated, or losing, composure with the person's or situation will certainly only make it worse. Sometimes walking away and asking another official to help the player is the best practice. I'm not sure I've ever had to go that route with something. That's where the second opinion can come in and usually help with that. But let's not get it escalated to where you need to walk away from the situation and have to have somebody else come in. That's because of a interaction, not because of a second opinion ruling. And it takes thick skin to do what we do. And it's tough to officiate. Some of you, I know Dick Dosick, some of you have officiated other sports. What's football about it? Who else here who's officiated other sports? Yeah. How much have you gotten yelled at for all the, you're a bum, you're the worst official I've ever seen. That was walking, that's holding, thankfully we don't have that by and large, but sometimes it does take thick skin to do what we do. Rules officials are, bound to find themselves in awkward situations during tournaments. It just happens. We try not to. That's where, as we're marking and setting up golf courses, the best rules official is a well-marked golf course. And that's what our staff does greatly. We spend a lot of time making sure that we try and address everything that could happen, but sometimes it, can't get every little situation potentially covered. But always remember that you're a representative of the CGA. This logo means something, and y'all are a part of us. And we want to have you be great representatives to us as we're going to be today. Like Chris Wolf, I'm working on some new swag for you, so I'll leave it at that. But we'll get to that here at some point. If the situation cannot be resolved in a calm, professional manner, certainly contact the OIC. Hey, we get paid. We're on payroll. We'll take the arrows. You get lunch. And $500 now reimbursement for rule school. So let us take the brunt, and we'll handle the situation. All right. So a lot of do's and don'ts here. I'm not going to really read this all, but this list is pretty good here. I do leave the area as soon as you make the ruling. Balls and get out of there. I mean, there's no need to linger. Another one, no Barney fights. Andy Griffith fans in here. We don't want to be. Barney fives and, get out there with, Barney is one bullet, kind of stuff.
So we're going to start with the role of a starter. So we need a starter to be a positive and professional tone for the players and for the tournament out there. And the starter may be the only official a player has contact with during an event. Also just want to take a chance to introduce myself if I haven't met you yet. My name's Killian. I work in the junior department here at the CGA. Just want to say a big thank you for you guys all being here today and just all your help throughout the year as well. Want to give a quick shout out to one of our tournaments this summer. The 15 and under is in July at Holly Ridge, and it's a junior girls event. So if you're a female official or you know any female officials, we would love to have you join us. Our goal is to have one official with every group. It's a younger, more beginner level age group. And so having someone that's there that kind of helps them take some steps to be efficient with where they're setting their bag, things like that, help them with different rules and just entry level things that sometimes they don't know if they're just starting off. So just, it's always good to have officials out there. But yeah, again, if you have any female friends that are officials as well, we'd love to have them join us for that tournament. So we'll keep moving along here. So again, rules of a starter, you're going to ensure that the players start at the time established by the committee. Starter is going to distribute scorecards and special notices to the competitors. The CGA will provide starters notes with details about the day/event that need to be covered with each group. You'll answer any rules questions the players may ask. And if you need any assistance, you can always call the CGA official in charge, especially on the first day of the tournament. They'll usually have a meeting with all the rules officials and go over important notes on the rule sheet, anything that needs to make any changes or anything that you need to communicate with the players on that tee. That official in charge is going to be the one that's going to be communicating that all with you. And as a starter, make sure you wear your earpiece. We've had it before, but again, you never know when someone's going to come through on that radio, and the last thing you want is for someone to take a backswing and all of a sudden you have someone talking really loud over the radio. So we do not call groups to the tee. Players are responsible for being at their starting tee on time. However, if a player is missing, we do what we can to help get the player to the tee on time. See this a lot with double tee starts, especially if it's far away. So if you're noticing that a few minutes before you don't have all your players, go ahead and say that over the radio. A lot of times CGA staff can help step in. We can go either to the range or try to look around, check on the 10th tee. Maybe they went to the wrong tee. I know this happens sometimes at Longleaf and it's quite a long ways to get back to the other side. So just want to make sure we do that and try to avoid penalty if at all possible. And again, just calling the CGA official in charge to make them aware. Again, we see a lot of these players over and over, so we can try to recognize them, point them out, or give them a little nudge that they need to make their way over to the tee to get started. And if the driving range or putting green is close by, you can call over to see if the player is there or ask the other players in the group if they've seen the missing player that morning. Sometimes it's just, oh yeah, they just ran to the bathroom. They'll be right here, but just want to make sure that we're doing, what we can within reason to avoid penalty for these players. And then again, that wrong tee situation, just want to be aware so that if they are at another tee, they can make it on time to the tee they're supposed to be playing. And then, like we said, we do not call them, so you do not have to drive around looking for them. If you're at a starting hole, you stay there, communicate anything else over the radio, and we'll take care of the rest. All right, so when you get to the tee, this will be waiting for you. Starting and pairing sheet, official scorecards in starting time order, pencils, digital clock, and notice to players and local rule sheets, hole location sheets, Sharpie markers, tees, and sunscreen and bug spray. If you haven't had a chance during the next break, we also have a starters box set up over here next to Chris A. There's some paperwork and some things, so if you haven't had a chance yet, you can check it out, see what it should look like in there, and see what you should have to expect when you're assigned to be a starter. As a starter, to each player, you're going to give them their own scorecard. Make sure it has the right name and hometown. And then you're going to ask them to exchange scorecards with another player and make sure all players know each other or have been introduced. At junior events, all players use Golf Genius digital scorecards. So just something to note. I think most people that work junior events, you're pretty savvy with it and know how to get them started on there, but always good to make sure they have that downloaded and set up before they start play of that first hole, because it's a lot to try to go track them down later and make sure they're entering those scores if they haven't already signed in. And then you'll also give them a local rule sheet with the hole location sheet printed on the other side, and a hard card, which will be in the starters box, but they are optional. If a player wants one, they can have one, but you don't have to give one to every player. So we usually just make a note. You can always say, hard cards are available. If you'd like one, they're in the box, but you're not responsible to give every player one when you start. All right. So in an effort to make CGA championships and qualifiers a more enjoyable experience, we are asking one player in each group to live score during the qualifier and championship rounds. The starter will provide the GGID to one player in group to facilitate live scoring. All information will be provided on the starter sheet and starters notes. The CGA OIC will instruct players to download Golf Genius app prior to first round. Again, we have a lot of people that are playing often with us, so a lot of them know the drill, but it's important that we talk about this with every single group in case you have people who've never played in one of our events before, or maybe they're not the one that usually does the scoring for their group. You know, sometimes people are happy to do it. Sometimes you have groups that are a little more reluctant, but someone should always be keeping score. It helps us with pace of play and know where people are along the way as well. So if you're a starter, we ask that you arrive to the assigned tee 20 minutes prior to the first starting time to read the rule sheets and starters notes prior to the first group arriving. Again, usually the OIC is going to have a tournament committee meeting about 30 minutes before, so they'll give you any information that you might need for the day, and then you can head on over to the first tee, get yourself settled, make sure you have all your materials and that we're not missing anything. And then we also ask that you guys maintain order on the first or 10th tee. So only players, caddies, or CGA officials on duty are to be in or around the starting area. Again, within reason, you know, someone comes and gives their player or their kid or spouse, whoever it might be, a banana or a snack or something, that's fine, but make sure they're getting out of there quickly. They don't need to be on the tee. That all can be done beforehand. So again, they don't need to watch from the tee. Sometimes we'll rope off if we have the materials with us, but we try to keep anyone that's not official out of that area, try to keep it clear and maintain that order. Do not delay a group because the competitor is late in appearing for their starting time. At USGA events, please note which player was given a caddy bib on the tee to help collecting them after the round. A lot of caddy bibs seem to walk away, especially the ones with the USGA logo on them. So again, want to make sure we note that on the tee sheet. And we don't have caddies anymore for CGA events, but we do for the USGA events. So again, just want to make sure we're getting those back and make sure you note that on the tee sheet. You're going to start each group exactly at their assigned starting time. If you fall behind, contact your OIC at that event and you'll ask them about catching up on time. If the group did not start on time, write down their adjusted starting time and communicate any changes to the committee when you can. Again, this is important for pace of play. If 2 hours after they start, they're 5 minutes out of position, but they also started 5 minutes late, then they're actually going to be, their time is going to be adjusted for that 5 minutes. So we just want to make sure we note that, so we're not yelling at people for pace of play issues, which we'll talk about in a little bit. At events where carts are allowed, no more than 2 carts are allowed per group. You'll pair up players and or caddies if necessary. You'll contact the official in charge if players are not willing to condense carts. And report to the golf shop any extra carts that may be left at the starting tee. All right, time of starting penalties. So if a player arrives within 5 minutes of the assigned starting time, the penalty for failure to start on time is in individual match play, it's going to be a loss of hole. And so they'll go on to that next second hole. In individual stroke play, it's going to be 2 strokes. So again, they get there within that 5 minutes. They are only going to get the 2-stroke penalty for that. After the 5 minutes has elapsed, the penalty is disqualification. So a little question, when is a player considered to be late for his or her starting time? When the official clock has turned to the assigned starting time, for example, if their starting time is 8 o'clock, the player is late when the clock turns from that 7:59 to 8 o'clock. We have clocks in our starters boxes as well. So always try to keep an eye on who's there. Make sure you're noting that 7:59, 59, as soon as that turns over to 8, anyone that's not there ready to play is going to be penalized the 2 strokes. And then if they're not there within 5 minutes, disqualification. All right, another question. A player is assigned by the committee to a group with a 9 o'clock starting time. He or she arrives at the first tee at 9:06 a.m., but for whatever reason, for example, weather, slow play, or a ruling, the starting time has been delayed until after he or she arrives. What is the ruling? And as we'll find out, the group was unable to start at the time originally established by the committee, and the player arrived before it could do so. The player is not in breach of Rule 5.3. So in this case, that player got lucky because of that time moving back, so they're not going to be late. Officials who assist in scoring play a very important role. Many discrepancies and disqualifications could arise, and we need to make sure that we get it right. It is the committee's responsibility to define the scoring area and when scorecards are considered returned. Again, that's something that we will try to communicate with you before the round. So we'll talk about that in the pre-tournament meeting. And that way, whoever is on starting duties that day, they can let the players know, please come behind the clubhouse, find the CGA tent. It'll be inside, whatever the case may be for which club you're at. All right, talk a little bit about qualifiers. So qualifiers are all about qualifying. It's easy as an official to get caught up in the drama of someone close to the cut line. So we don't want to guess or project the cut line. We tell all players to follow scoring online and they must be available for a playoff if needed. A lot of times people will come up asking, what do you think the cut's going to be? Do you think this is going to make it? How's it looking? We don't want to guess on that. So some players like to know the cut and some would prefer not to know. All right. Also want to ask the players, this is during scoring, so ask the players if anyone played a second ball under Rule 20.1C or if there were any rulings they needed to be decided. A lot of times we try to ask, so are there any scoring issues or any rules questions that you might have? Sometimes players are hesitant to share something that happened during the round, but by asking that, it might trip a memory or they'll remember what questions they may have had from hole 2. Again, we want to make sure that we're avoiding any kind of rules questions or scenarios that would get us into more trouble and that player would be getting penalized further. We'll ask the players to remain in the scoring area while you check and add up the scorecards. Again, you want to maintain that order in there and you can use the computer to add scores, no math required. So the computer does it all. We just have to make sure that the hole by hole scores are correct. Right. Need to make certain that both the competitor and the marker have signed the scorecard. So we need 2 signatures on there. Make the check mark by each name. You can take a marker if we're using paper scorecards. The competitor is responsible for their hole by hole scores. In 4-ball stroke play, scores must be individually identifiable. So that's important. If you're at a 4-ball event, make sure they know who made what score. And the committee is responsible for the 9-hole and 18-hole totals and in net events properly applying any handicap strokes that are going to be received. The scoring area can be a very stressful place. Players are worried about qualifying or their finishing place, and the official is worried about making sure everything is done correctly. Please do what you can to avoid the scoring table while a group is there. So again, a group is there with a rules official. You can stand off to the side. We want to try to avoid as many people in that area as possible. Try to keep it calm and quiet in there while the players are going back through their scores so that we can avoid any mistakes. We're going to scan the QR code provided at all events to keep up to date on the leaderboard and any potential playoffs. So again, as an official, it's always good to have an idea of where we are in case we need to go back out on a hole or we need to communicate with the club about playoffs, things like that. And again, just don't hang around the table. So if you're not in scoring, we ask that if there's a group in there, we try to keep that area clear as possible. So making sure those groups, especially the last few, have plenty of space and no distractions to get their cards sorted out and returned. Again, it's a high pressure environment, so just want to make sure that we're making it as stress-free as possible. All right, everybody's favorite, pace of play. Pace of play is very important, but it can be very difficult. Lots of personalities and interpretations of what is a good pace of play. Again, they referenced it earlier, but you have parents, spectators, coaches, family. It gets very stressful out there, especially when you're telling someone that they're not in the position they need to be. So pace of play guidelines will be provided by the CGA official in charge. Pace of play changes based on format of play. It can be adjusted by the official in charge. And then when to talk about pace of play with groups. So we want to be proactive, but not aggressive. Want to look at all factors before speaking to the group. So where is the group ahead? They just had a long ruling or a ball search. Maybe they're making a turn, things like that. So just try to keep those all in mind when we're looking. And then we don't want to approach them during play of a hole. So sometimes if a group has had several issues throughout the day, an official might watch from a distance, kind of keep up with them, make sure we're moving along. But we don't want to talk to them about pace of play issues during a play of a hole. And again, keeping in constant communication with the CGA official in charge about groups out of position. Sometimes someone won't say something and all of a sudden they're on hole 15 and an official will say they've been out of position all day and that's the first time you've heard of it. It's hard to get it back on track at that point. So, that first time that you're noticing that group might be out of position, we want to say something, give them a nudge, make sure that they're making up that time so that you don't get a long gap. It's again, as the day goes on, it's harder and harder to make that fix and close that gap out there. When you're an official, you will get one of these sheets called a Raguzi, and it'll have the times that the group will be finishing. So if you look at that first group, 8:14, they should be playing that first hole in about 14 minutes. The official in charge will make adjustments based on how the course plays, whether it's par 3, 4, 5, etc. Maybe there's a long walk. Maybe they know that between 9 and 10, it's a big, or yeah, 9 and 10, there's a big gap. So just want to make sure that you're keeping up with that. Maybe make a note, if you're sitting on hole 9, making a note when that group is coming through to see, are all groups playing fast? Are all groups playing a little bit slow, depending on how timing is going that day? So pace of play falls under Rule 5.6. On-course officials spend the majority of their time dealing or concerned with pace of play. There are several different pace of play systems in the world, but CGA uses group time and position. So again, where are they with the groups around them, and how are they doing based on that Raguzi sheet? No matter what system is used, it is only useful if the policy is followed. So when we're talking about pace of play on the radio, communicating with the rest of the committee using accurate information is critical to enforcing pace of play. I'm going to speak with the official in charge about what you're seeing on the course before talking to any group. So before you go up to a group saying something, make sure you're communicating that. Maybe the official in charge has knowledge of something else that happened just before that may have led to something like that. If there are other officials that have been involved with the group on a previous hole, go ahead and speak up so that everyone has a full picture of what has been happening. CGA staff will be using a new feature in Golf Genius, which allows us to see when live scoring times or input for each group on each hole, which can help us figure out when a group had a problem. These times will all be treated as unofficial because of the variance in when groups input their scores, whether it's on the green, in the cart, or on the next tee, etc. And then a couple of do's and don'ts. Again, when you're talking on the radio, good things to say, want to provide factual information. Something like the 8:20 group finished the 12th hole at 9:10, 5 minutes behind pace. The 13th hole is open. Do you want me to give them a warning? You don't want to try to say too much on the radio, but just want to stick to the facts so that we can keep it moving and make those decisions based on the information provided. Again, if you say I'm on the 10th hole and it's empty, or this group on number 8 is playing slow and it looks like they're going to be behind pace, that doesn't help us get them back into position or know where the other groups are around them. So just want to make sure that we're making note of that as well. Closing the gap. A misconception has been that the allotted time is the pace they should play, but this is the maximum amount of time given prior to implementing pace of play, timing procedures, and penalties. There's slow players, fast players out there. We've had some players that say they're going to use all 40 seconds, and sometimes they do. But again, just want to make sure that we're keeping them in line with what it says on that Raguzi. At CGA events, we may speak to out of position groups and ask them to close the gap, even if they are under their allotted time. So if everybody else is playing at a certain pace and you have a group that's out of position based on that, we will ask them to close that gap and try to make sure they're making up that time in between. Our goal is to be more proactive in helping groups stay in position and under the maximum time. We found that once groups fall out of position and over the allotted time, it's a tough task to get them back in position. So again, want to make sure we're making these changes and requests early so that we can keep them moving and hopefully close that gap and not have a long delay at the end of the day. This will be a friendly reminder to keep position with the group in front and not an official warning. That's a good thing to say to a group. Again, we don't want to upset them or startle them. Sometimes people get more frazzled if they feel like they're going to be penalized, and it causes them to stress out. So we're there to help them, but we also need to make sure it's fair for the rest of the field and make sure they're going to keep moving with that pace. So what is out of position for the first group? A group is considered out of position if at any time during the round the group is behind the prescribed pace of play on the scorecard or on the Raguzi. Once they've fallen out of position, we'll give them a friendly reminder. You'll leave the group, let them keep going, give them a couple holes, and then recheck their position. Again, if they've made up a couple minutes or they've closed the gap a little bit, that friendly encouragement, great job, keep it up, keep, moving in that right direction, helps them to keep going and not get flustered. So we need to let the groups first play a few holes to establish a pace for the rest of the field. Any falling group will be considered out of position when they are over the prescribed time, and if they reach a par 3 hole that is clear of all play, and all players in the preceding group have played their strokes from the teeing ground of the next hole. They reach a par 4 hole, which is not clear of all play, but which becomes clear of all play before all groups in the group have played their strokes from the teeing area. Or they reach a par 5 hole and the group in front is on the putting green. Or reach a par 4 or par 5 hole, which is clear of all play. So again, here's what you're going to say. Your group is over the allotted time and you are out of position. Please work to get back into position by the X hole. Usually give them 2 or 3 holes to catch up, and thank you to them. Just again, trying to keep it as friendly as possible, but also let them know this is serious and you do need to make up that time. And then we want to give them a couple holes to make it up. And again, you're going to leave them, give them a couple holes, and then come back and recheck. The goal is to help groups not reach the point where they may be timed and subject to penalty. So some common sense will be needed. Threesome following a twosomes. Sometimes you get a withdrawal midway through the round or in between rounds. And unfortunately, sometimes you get a twosome that'll be in between a threesome or a weird number. That might cause some different, if you have a twosome, they're going to play it much faster than that threesome behind them. They should still be somewhat in position, still be able to see them, but just things to note that sometimes there's a reason why one group is a little bit faster than another. Again, being gentle in your delivery to avoid possible confrontation with players. Again, this is a hot topic with people and their spectators. It can get very confrontational very quickly. So just want to make sure we're saying it in a respectful way and encouraging them, explaining the facts to them, and keep them moving. And all players might not appreciate our efforts. Again, want to make sure that we keep them going and nudge them in a nice, friendly way. We won't mention pace of play to groups if there's no pace of play issue. So again, don't need to get involved. If they're making their time, they're moving along just fine. If a group needs to be timed, we will try to have a CGA staff member do the timing. If that's not possible, we may ask you to time the group. Please do not start timing a group before discussing the situation with the official in charge. Again, we'll talk about that over the radio. That official in charge will say, it's been several bad holes. They're still out of position. Can you please help us get that time if they can't come over there and do it themselves? So before timing a group, double check each of the items below to make sure all of the below details are correct. Their starting time. So again, we talked about that earlier. Just want to make sure that they didn't have any delay in the starting time, the overall time, their position relative to the group ahead, spread of the field ahead. Is there a backup soon? If there's a par 3 that's backed up and has several groups waiting and you're pushing them to catch up, you're just pushing them to catch up to a stall. And so just want to make sure we're aware of that and not forcing them to speed up, speed up, speed up. And then all of a sudden they have to wait. A player has 40 seconds to make a stroke, period. So 40 seconds is it. No extra time or grace period or margin of error given to players, whether they are the first or the last player to play. Our CGA pace of play policy for stroke play. First, notify all players in the group that they are out of position and behind allotted pace of play. First bad time is going to be a warning to these individuals. A second bad time is going to be a 1-stroke penalty. Again, this is all something that you'll discuss with the official in charge. And a third bad time is going to be a 2-stroke penalty. Fourth bad time equals disqualification. We try very hard not to get to that point. I never have in a tournament, but again, want to make sure we're communicating everything with the official in charge and they would be the person that would make that call. In match play, we notify all players in the match that they are out of position and behind the allotted pace of play. Again, first bad time, warning to the individuals. Second bad time, 1-stroke penalty. Third bad time is going to be that loss of hole. And a fourth bad time, disqualification. And a couple more do's and don'ts. So again, want to make notes of any rulings, ball searches, or other factors that might affect a group's position on the course that you observe. Pay attention to all factors, position of group in front, lengthy rulings, ball searches before timing a group. Stay with the group at a distance to help them improve their pace by being available for rulings and ball searches when necessary. Things that we don't want to do, we don't want to approach a group during the play of a hole to tell them to speed up or that they will be timed. We don't want to mention pace of play at all to a group if there is not a problem. And we don't want to visibly use a stopwatch to time players. If you need to time a player, do so discreetly from a distance. Again, trying to avoid that conflict and making people upset or flustered out there. Our goal is to help them at the end of the day. And don't continuously pester a group that has fallen behind pace of play. Help them get back in position and move on. People don't want to feel targeted. And I think that's something that when we approach people about pace of play, sometimes they feel like it's a personal thing. It's not, but we want to get out of there and make sure that we don't give them that impression or make them feel that way, but we do need them to keep moving. All right, and next we'll have Rusty Harder come up and he'll talk about some more things. Thank you.
All right, we were just talking about, not fun stuff necessarily, pace of play. Now we're going to talk about really a popular events we run. We run, I think, 6 match play championships, and everyone loves to referee those match play events and get to be involved in those matches. But before we get started, I wanted to say, as everyone said, thank you all for being a part of the greatest group of rules officials in the country. There's a lot of old friends and old faces I see here, and I'm very happy that to know all of you. And what's really great is there's tons of new faces and new friends in here that I haven't met, which means there's a ton of new officials here that y'all help recruit and get in here. And really, we hear from other associations, this is the greatest crop of rules officials in the nation. They're jealous of us and what we have, and that's, again, thanks to all of you, and so we really appreciate that. So thank you very much. Now we'll get into talking about officiating match play. When they're 2 different times, when you're out there as an official just watching the matches, and then as you're refereeing a match, kind of the differences here. But match play is very different stroke play. It's 2 sides playing against each other. It's their own match. It's only against those 2 players. It doesn't matter what's going on in the other matches on the course. Match play is a game played by your holes up or holes down in the match. And a hole is won by completing in fewer strokes unless it's been conceded. The state of the match is expressed in holes up, so somebody may be 2 up, or the match may be tied, and maybe they're 3 up with 5 holes left to play. That's kind of how we talk about match play. You're not 3 under or 5 under, you're holes up or tied. General penalty in match play is loss of hole. It's not 2 strokes. And in match play, you may have an observer out there. So in a match, we may have a referee with the match, and we may have an observer that's going to go out in front of the match and be kind of in the landing zones to help assist the referee in the match, to help them know, hey, this player's in the penalty area, cross right here, or both balls are pretty close and ball A is away, they're going to play first. The observer should not attend the flag stick, mark the position of hole, really, or be on the putting green at all. Unfortunately, at our events, we have enough people now to have referees in every match. We may not necessarily have observers in our events, but if you get to USGA championships, they do like to use observers in those events, especially because you're walking in those matches. So an observer is a referee's deputy. They're there to help. They stay 1 shot ahead, so they're going to stay in the landing zone on a par 4 or par 5. Then they'll go up to the green. On a par 3, they'll go ahead up to the green. So stay 1 shot ahead of the match, and you want to position yourself where the balls are expected to come to rest again, so you can see, hey, the ball crossed here, this ball is inbounds or out of bounds, or go ahead and help the referee know who may be away in that case. Okay, a referee in a match. What do you want to do? Everyone's goal is to be able to referee a match. And a lot of you have done that here in some of our championships. We're done it with other organizations. So if you are going to be a referee in the match, what is your objective? First thing, you want to introduce yourself to the players and caddies. You may have a starter there, but you're also going to want to go up and, hey, I'm going to be the referee in your match today. I'll be there to help in any way that you can. If it's players who played in tons of match play events, they played in USGA championship, you don't have to go through the whole spiel of, I'm going to help you if I can. I'm going to stay out of the way. If there's a breach of the rule, I'm going to have to act on it. If they're seasoned veteran players, just ask them to identify their golf balls, make sure they count their clubs, and I'm there to help you. I'll be with you in the match to stay out of your way and go ahead that way. If they're less experienced players, maybe in our junior championships, they haven't played a lot of matches, you'll want to really tell them, why are you out there helping? You're not there to be a threatening figure. You're there, again, to ask me, are you familiar with match play rules, how we're going to be playing today? Review the duties of the referee. You're there to determine questions of fact. You're there just to help them prevent any penalties that may come up. But if there is one, you will have to act on it. But you're there to assist the players. Make sure concessions are loud and clear. That's a popular one, especially for new players who've not played a lot of match play. That concession idea, we really want to make sure those concessions are clear, and we know you can see that putter, that stroke to that opponent. They know that, and you as the referee know that as well, so that you don't get into messy situations. Talking about concessions here, a player may concede the match at any time prior to the start or conclusion of the match, and they may concede a hole anytime prior to the start or conclusion of that particular hole. Again, they can concede their opponent's stroke at any time. They can be 100 yards away in the fairway, and maybe they hit their shot out of bounds. Say, okay, that's good. Just pick it up. Let's go on. The opponent's considered to hold out with the next stroke, and the ball may be removed. So you may be on the putting green, and you can say, "Hey, that putt's good." You can pick up that ball and give it back to the opponent, or you can knock it away. They don't have to pick it up. You can pick that up. That act is a concession as well. A concession may not be declined or withdrawn, so that's important for them to know. Once they concede that next stroke, that's locked in. You can't change it at that point. Once they make that concession, it is final. So during the match, if you are a referee in a match, you're gonna stay with that group at all times. You and those 2 players, or you and those 4 players, perhaps in a 4-ball match play, you're 5 people or 3 people together staying in that match, going with them the whole time. So you wanna stay with them, but again, give them space, stay back, stay away from them. Practice preventive officiating. So, if they're going into a penalty area, you may want to be there just to make sure they don't need any help with anything. Used to be much more important when you couldn't move loose impediments. Now, not quite as vital, but you want to be there just to make sure if they're ever lifting their ball, maybe make sure if they can't clean it, tell them they can't clean it, or, go ahead and tell them if they're listening to take release from a park path, okay, you can go ahead and clean your ball in that case. Be in a position to watch for improper dropping procedures. Playing another ball without stating its purpose, playing out of turn, that's gonna be an important one, because whoever's away, in match play has the, right to play first, so you wanna make sure whoever is, away is playing first. Playing from outside the teeing area. And again, moving ball markers, especially on putting greens, if you're moving it out of the way, for a player to putt, make sure they get that ball marker back. And again, making sure concessions are loud and clear for everyone in the match. As a referee, you don't want to go into bunkers when assisting with a ball search. You want to stay out of the bunker if at all possible. And don't go into the putting greens unless you're having to assist with the ruling, whether you're measuring who's away, or something to that effect. Otherwise, stay out of bunkers and stay on the fringes of the putting green. So you're there again to decide questions of fact. So you cannot ignore any ruling or say, oh, well, he dropped really 3 club links, but it's fine there. You're there to apply the rules, make sure that everything is done in accordance with the rules, ensure fair play. Again, be there, be a good professional steward there with the match. Stay sharp and prevent breaches whenever possible in the match. Be respectful and diplomatic with both players or both sides involved in the match. We talked about this, a risk rules official can make the situation worse. So, you may be telling a player about a penalty, how you to potentially handle that situation. They could compound the penalty and make them really upset for the rest of the hole or the rest of the match in that case. And again, you are the referee, your decision is ultimately final, but you can consult the official in charge or another person in that case. So if you ever have any need backup, need a second opinion, call the another observer, call CGA official in charge for help in that match. Keep conversations to a minimal with players, caddies, spectators, whoever's there is involved. Kind of my thinking is I really won't engage with the players too much unless they engage with me, and then I'll have a conversation. But otherwise, I'm kind of staying a few yards back or a little bit back, and basically out of their way totally until I have to step in or until they look around and try to find me and bring me in that case. As a referee during the match, you will be announcing the status of each match or announcing the status of the hole in the match after each hole. And that's important because that makes sure that the players know that you know how many strokes everyone had and you know the status of the match. And it happens sometimes you'll say, hole 1, Joe Boyd 4, Tim Murphy 5. And they'll say, no, we both made 4. So you can correct it right then before you go and tee off on the next hole so that you make sure everyone has the correct status of the match. We're going to announce the hole and the match standing. We'll try to give you a scorecard to help keep track of it if you like to make tick marks for strokes. And then we'll also ask you to post scores in Golf Genius for us as well. So here's a sample of your referee in a match between Dustin Johnson and Jason Day. Whoever has the honor at the first hole, that's who you're going to announce their score first. It doesn't matter who made the lowest score on the hole. So we're always going to announce Dustin first. Oops, I'm sorry there. So in this case, after hole 1, we'll say, hole 1, Dustin Johnson, or we may say Mr. Johnson 5, Mr. Day 4, Mr. Day's 1 up. After hole 2, Mr. Johnson 3, Mr. Day 4, match is tied. So again, it's just so everyone knows, hey, we all know the status of the match. I didn't miss any penalty drops. I didn't miss any strokes. anything like that. So it's very important to announce the status of the match so everyone's on the same page. Any questions about refereeing match play there? All right, perfect. Now, we like to go over kind of our hard card, what we use in our championships and qualifiers, and just kind of talk about some of the reasonings why that we have some of these rules in play. You know, if you go to a CGA qualifier, any CGA championship, these rules are going to be standard, they're going to be in play. And one thing you'll find on our hard card is different than other organizations. We put a lot of procedural things on here just to help players. So it's not truly, you know, it just reaffirms what the rules of golf say. So we try to include as much as we can here to try to help the players out as much as possible. So you should have copies of this. We always provide a link in the rules official email to our hard card as well. So the first, starting at the top, one thing we started last year in 2024, caddies are not permitted in CGA championships. Only in USGA qualifying are caddies permitted, and in Tiger Tot events where parents can caddy for players 6 to 11. But any CGA championship, any CGA qualifier, caddies are not allowed. We have a list of conforming driver heads, so your driver head player has to be on the conforming list. The one ball rule is not in effect, and the group punch specifications are not in effect. So we just kind of want to reiterate that, because a lot of times we'll get questions from players. Hey, is the one ball rule in effect? Well, we're just going to tell you right now it's not in effect, versus saying, well, if it's not on the sheet, it's not in effect. We just go ahead and tell you up front. But you must have a conforming golf ball, so the list of conforming golf balls is in effect. We do not allow metal spikes. I think that's pretty much standard across the board, but we do not allow metal spikes, soft spikes only. As Jack said last night, the biggest change in the game, soft spikes coming around a few years back. Another, again, this is not a rule or not a change to the rules, but we just want to call out that if a player has a rules issue during the round, in match play, they can make a request for a ruling and we refer to the rule there, or if they're in stroke play, they can play 2 balls. So we're just kind of calling out for them that, hey, if you have an issue, play 2 balls or make a request for a ruling in match play. And we have a standard definition of what out of bounds is, and there may be times when a particular course, we may end up superseding this, but in general, 95% of the time, our out of bounds is going to be defined by the course side points of white stakes at ground level. And it may include white lines on the ground if we have to turn around curves or go through heavy bushes or something like that. But we also have model local rule A5, which if a ball crosses a public road and comes to rest on another part of the golf course, that ball is going to be treated as out of bounds, even if it comes to rest on another part of the golf course. So we have that standard on our hard card. And then kind of a course marking call out here where we'll try to mark white stakes that we may at the end of the out of bounds, or kind of where the out of bounds turns and goes 90 degrees to infinity. We'll put 2 white stakes there, and that kind of, what I say, ends the out of bounds or sends the out of bounds perpendicular to that out of bounds boundary. So we just call that out there as well for course marking. Penalty areas, we call it, if the penalty areas have a red line only on one side, we basically mean that penalty area goes to infinity that way, unless there's out of bounds or something else marked on that other side. So we may do a red line, and then it's deep woods. Our intent is everything to that direction is all going to be in penalty area to help us with knowledge of virtual certainty. Relief on the opposite side of a red penalty area coinciding with out of bounds. So this is a case where there's out of bounds in a penalty area, and maybe your ball crosses the penalty area out of bounds when it comes to rest, on the course inbounds, but you don't have an edge to drop from that penalty area. This local rule allows us to go to the opposite edge where it crossed the out of bounds and drop from that spot there. So it gives the player a place to drop versus just going stroke and disc in that case. And standard ground under repair, we're going to define that typically by white lines, and it also is going to include French drains or newly trenched areas, even if not marked. So those French drains are always going to be ground under repair, and there may be times when there's so much of these trenched areas, maybe they're working on irrigation, they don't want us to put these thin little white lines around it. So this right here on the hard card covers that for us, these trenched areas. Relief for seams of cut turf, and sod seam rule is in effect in all of our championships and qualifiers. So if the ball's in the seam, maybe the sod is completely grown in and we're not getting relief from the sod, but the actual, if you're in the sod seam, we will give you relief for that. And then white line areas tying into artificially surfaced roads and paths. So there may be times when we're marking ground under repair and it's 2 or 3 feet from a cart path. So instead of us making one circle and then having the cart path separately, and we get into this, well, I'm taking relief from the cart path and I'm dropping the ground under repair, or I'm taking relief from ground under repair and I'm having to go to the cart path. We'll just connect that white line with the cart path, so tie it in, and then you can take relief from both situations pretty much at once. So it basically ties in the ground under repair into the cart path. It makes one large area, so we're not bouncing back and forth. And there's kind of flower beds surrounded by movable obstructions. So a lot of places they may have the kind of turnaround cart path, and they have nice decorative flower beds and stuff in there. We have interference with the cart path versus having to make a person go drop in this tiny little flower bed. We basically are just going to say that area encircled by the flower bed, which is treating that all as one big cart path. So then they're entitled to take relief outside of that circled area. And then we like to call out and list some integral objects that are not going to be given relief from: cables, rods, wires, wrapping when they're closely attached to trees, artificial walls, and penalty areas and bunkers, unless otherwise stated. So there may be times when we're going to supersede these integral objects and say some of them are immovable obstructions. Then we like to mention what temporary movable obstructions are. So standard green side fans are going to be temporary movable obstructions. Our starting tents and scoring tents are also going to be temporary movable obstructions. The local rule is going to allow players to take line of play relief, which is what Andy mentioned about those observation towers at the Masters. One change we made this year is we're now going to be able to take relief on either side of the TIO. So previously you had to go to your nearest point of complete relief. Now if you have TIO interference, you can take relief on either side of the TIO, so that you actually get a choice in that case. So that's a new change we made this year. And another note, any of our championship signage, such as our whole sign posts, our banners, or any of our T signs that we put up, they're considered movable obstructions. So a lot of them, they just have a post in the ground, they can take the sleeve off, and then they're not going to have any of that TIO interference. If for some reason it's hard to move it or we cannot move it, then we would just treat that sign as a TIO. So we kind of default to try to move it. We can't get it out of the way quickly. We treat it as a TIO there. Another local rule we put on our hard card: a ball deflected by a power line. So in any of our championship qualifiers, the ball is deflected by a power line, we're going to have to replay that shot. That's what the local rule says there. Wood chips and mulch or loose impediments, just want to call that out just so people know, maybe it's, mulch is technically man-made, but we have to define it as something. So we're going to call wood chips and mulch loose impediments, just in case someone's taking relief by clearing out those loose impediments that cause their ball to move. Well, now we know they're loose impediments, not movable obstructions in that case. Another popular rule, kind of affectionately known as the 2+2 local rule, the movable obstructions close to the putting green. So we have the sprinkler heads around the edge of the putting green. If a player's putting the ball on the ground, the sprinkler heads between them and the hole, we're going to give them relief. The only caveat is both the ball and the immovable obstruction must be in fairway cut height. So if the ball is in the rough or the immovable obstruction is in rough height, we're not going to give you relief from this local rule here. But this is in play in every one of our championships and qualifiers. And we also like to list our pace of play. I won't go through our policy again, but we try to just tell the players quickly, what our policy is, what happens if you don't follow the policy, just so we always have it in front of them. We have a pace of play policy on our championship portals that they can look at, and we reference them to their in their email we send to them. But we try to include as much as we can to help you all have backup there that, hey, everyone's got this on the team, got this in their hands. We also like to get relief from aeration holes. So we just have this by default for both aeration holes on the putting green and aeration holes in the general area. There are two different relief procedures. So for a ball that's laying in an aeration hole in the putting green, you're going to place it out of that hole and keep playing. If the aeration hole is in the general area, you're going to drop it out of there. But again, we just have that standard just in case maybe they, punch the little area of cart traffic is, they punched that area and we didn't know about it. It's on our hard card and we're allowed to give relief for it there. And then we also, again, like to call out the procedure for stopping and resuming play. One big thing with our stoppage of play, if we're stopping for a dangerous situation, we blow the horn one long blast, but we also tell all the players, we want to make sure, make sure all the players heard ultimately that we're stopping play. And it may be that, here at Country Club, North Carolina, you get spread out a long way. We blow the horn here, they may not hear you all the way out to number 5 out there, and they're still playing. Well, we don't want to penalize them until the person on the committee goes by and tells everybody, hey, we stopped playing for a dangerous situation. That is the official stoppage of play. Even though we're gonna blow a horn, just in the effort of notifying as many people as possible, it still matters when they will be notified verbally and must stop play immediately there in that case. And then typically when we're resuming play, we're not gonna blow a horn. We just tell them, hey, when you get there with your group and you're ready to play, let's hit, let's get going. Because usually we're battling daylight or want to get back out there as quick as possible. And we also like to define what our rounds are. So our championship round is standard 18 holes, but in our qualifiers, again, this must have happened, Andy, Jack, back in the day. We call our qualifying rounds 2 9-hole rounds. So that helps us with weather. Maybe we have issues where it's pouring down rain and we get 9 holes done with the qualifier. We'll revert back to those scores so that we don't have to play, sit there all day and try to get 18 holes in or not have a qualifier at all. So championship rounds, 18 holes. Our qualifying rounds are 18 holes, but they consist of 2 9-hole rounds if weather requires that. And scorecard certification, another new change we made in 2025. A player scorecard is deemed to be returned 15 minutes after we enter it into our golf genius scoring system. So USGA last year gave this new time-based return method. So we waited through the offseason and talked about it with our staff and tournament committee about how we wanted to handle this. And we liked kind of doing this. We used to do this actually back in the day when we had paper scoreboards. Our scores were not official until we wrote them on the actual paper scoreboard. So we had variable scorecard return times for every player in every group. So once they allowed us to do this, we decided that 15 minutes after the score has been entered into our Golf Genius tournament software, that's when the scorecard is returned. So they can check their scores, we can enter them. 7 minutes later, they realize they're eating lunch. Oh wait, actually I had a 4 on there. They can come back to scoring as long as it's within that 15-minute time limit and correct that. And then we also have the local rule in play where if they forget to have them or the marker certify and sign the scorecard, we can make a modification without disqualifying them to just construct a penalty. But now they've got 15 minutes. And this doesn't mean, hey, just come play your card down and it doesn't matter. Still take the scoring process seriously, but it just gives everyone a little bit of a buffer that it's just a clerical error or a mistake was made. We're not going to cost your entire tournament. Ties in playoffs. We just want to call out a hole-by-hole playoff is used to determine the champion or final qualifying spots as necessary. Some of our qualifiers, we take ties, so we don't have playoffs. But a lot of our match play qualifiers now, we need exactly 64 or 32 players at the championship. So we're going to have those on-course playoffs to get exact spots in that case. And then we like to define when the competition is final, when the trophy has been presented to the winner, or when all scores have been approved by the committee. That's when the competition is final, and then that's some important kind of dead ends for Rule 20 that we'll talk about later about when we can make adjustments to players' scores or adjustments to the match. And then we also want to call out just some local rules that you'll see a lot on our local rule sheets. Our notice to players that you're going to get in your cart before tournament. So a lot of times we'll define ground under repair this way. So we'll say areas circled in white are ground under repair, but we may further say, on a putting green, they may not want us to put white circles on the putting green or something. So maybe we'll use green dots or little white dots to help define that there. Or we may end up saying that, unmarked tire ruts may be treated as ground under repair, or hey, the new sod on hole 5. It's clearly, hey, this is all new sod on hole 5 and just hole 5. We may just put that language on there to take care of ground under repair. Then we also like to define specific instructions. So a lot of times split rail fences, stone walls, things like that are adjacent to cart paths. We'll just tie it all into the cart path. Key build. On several of their holes, they have this rope and stake that is sunk in the ground. So instead of having players trying to pull it out, we just say this rope and stake next to the cart path. The key builds are a part of the cart path in that case. Liners and bunkers, we like to treat those as obstructions. And again, the player kind of has an option. Treat it as movable. If you can move it out of the way without touching your golf ball in play, that's what we prefer. But if you start pulling it up and it's pulling up the whole bunker, let's just treat it as an immovable obstruction and play on in that case. Then there are times we'll have no play zones, mandatory relief areas, always tricky ruling when you get no play zones involved, but they do come up. And a lot of times they may be, you know, flower beds that the club does not want you playing out of, so we try to define them. You know, maybe if it's clear that the mulch bed right of 9 green is a no play zone, but if it's ever a question about, well, hey, if that flower bed one is that, we'll put orange stakes, we'll put green stakes, we'll do something to identify them further. There. And then preferred lives, when we have to, especially maybe early in the year, when courses are starting to grow out, we'll play preferred lives. The way that we play preferred lives, and we kind of have gone back and forth over the years. Any general area cut the fairway height or less. So pretty much, if you're in the fairway of your hole, of another hole, anywhere cut the fairway height or less, you can lift, clean, in place. It doesn't matter if you're playing the 5th hole and you're in the 5th fairway, if you hit it into the 6th fairway, if you're in fairway cut, you're inside of preferred lives if we're playing that local rule there. And always our preferred lives, lift, clean, in place within the club. That's just our standard, what we do. Again, we try to just be consistent so that they don't go to a junior championship and they're playing a scorecard league. And then they go to a men's qualifier and they're playing, you know, 2 club leagues. We're standard 1 club league for our preferred lives local rule. And then here, especially in the Pinehurst area, we may not treat the sandy areas as bunkers. We may say all sandy areas are part of the general area and they're not bunkers, and play the balls at lies. But you know, we may say, hey, still rate it, you know, like a bunker, but we're not treating it as a bunker. Ant hills or a dangerous animal condition, we may call that out, even though it is in the rules of golf. We like to, especially if it's a known problem, to put that on the local rule sheet and let them know. And then obviously how we define drop zone, you know, we'll have them, we'll try to typically put on the starters notes that, hey, make sure to tell the players on hole 5 there's a drop zone. Because a lot of times they'll take relief from the penalty area and then ride past the drop zone. Oh, I can use that. And it's, well, too late now, you've already proceeded under the rule there. But again, we put it on the notice of players and we try to tell our starters, to tell everyone. So you're doing your job. If you tell them whether they listen or not, that's on them. And just want to mention our caddy policy, our transportation policy. So in Tyga and CGA junior championships, there are no caddies. Players must walk and carry their bags. In CGA junior championships, spectators typically can rent those carts. You know, there are going to be a lot of carts left over because the players are walking. So in junior championships, Tyga events, there will be a ton of spectator carts out there. CGA men's and women's championships and qualifiers, caddies are not allowed. And typically all those carts are going to be used either for the players, for our rules committee and staff. But there may be limited exceptions where, you know, after we make the cut or something like that, spectator carts may be available in that case. So it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. But if we know we're going to a championship, we've got 140 players and 55 golf carts, we go ahead and tell the players in the pairings email, hey, no spectator carts first 2 rounds, and then try to get ahead of it there. USJ qualifiers, players must walk, caddies are allowed, and they may walk or rent a cart. In that case, players may sit in a stationary cart. US senior and senior amateur and senior women's amateur, though, players are allowed to ride in the cart and have the caddy. They can't ride at the same time. So those are the 2 limited kind of exceptions where there will be caddies and players in the cart potentially there. Any questions about our hard card local rules while we do something you'd like to see added or see us discuss? Yes, sir.
On past play, but on the one hand, we felt telling it to be proactive.
Mhm.
On the other hand, is don't read the players' strategy. And when I'm out of that, I really hold the pole. So I don't know. Even though I have a piece of paper that says where every group is supposed to be at any time. I don't know which group I'm talking to, unless I talk to somebody, say, what group are you?
Especially in junior events when they're not.
Especially in juniors, and so I try not to hazard them unless I see like you're a hole and a half behind or something. Then I'll ask them. So it's technically an awkward situation.
Yeah, and we hope and try and we understand that sheet, maybe you're going from hole 5 to 8 just with the layout of the course, but to try to just tick off what groups you've seen and then try to, you know, do some problem solving. And Zay always said, if you talk to a group, just call it out on the radio so that you can make a note that, hey, group 7, Joe talked to them, and then Maybe eventually we get to them, but yeah, there's not a perfect case, and maybe you ask the spectator, hey, what's your time? And I do that, in USJ qualifying, I'll say, what time did y'all tee off, And maybe I know they're behind, that just kind of triggers in their head, well, I'm asking you for a reason.
It's a trigger.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it is a delicate balance, we're fortunate with riding events where we have cart sunshine, I can just look right there and know that, but, try to tick off that sheet, hey, I've seen this group, and on this hole where I, maybe on the actual time on hole 5, they put the flag in at 4:25. I know I saw it there. So, but yeah, don't be afraid. So ask the spectator, hey, what time did the office will make sure I'm looking at the right group? And I think they'll appreciate it versus you just going right up and saying, hey, you're behind. And then, well, no, we're 2 groups behind what you're looking at. So it's okay to ask in that case, for sure.
Can you repeat that question, please?
Oh, and I'm sorry, he was asking, in the pace of play situation where, we don't want to just jump in there and say, hey, you're behind, you're on the clock. But how do we determine who that player or that group is? We have cart signs in all of our riding championships. In the junior championships, there are no cart signs. So unless you see a player's name on a bag or know who it is, and I said, ask the spectator, hey, what tee time is this? Or just ask the group, hey, just trying to get my bearings, what group is it? And in that case, for sure. Yes, sir.
There's a situation, a player needs to go back to a tee, they didn't get a provision, you go back to a tee. You really have some giving that player a ride, either from an official or from a spectator, back and forth.
So, say Brandon, we'll always give them a ride back to the tee within a walking event and then bring them back up to kind of where you picked them up from. Do you agree with that, Zay? Yeah. In USJ qualifying and in junior championship where players are walking, they have to go back to the tee.
That's all right for a spectator to do that as well.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, spectator, as long as it's clear what they're doing, as long as they're not riding them all over the place, going back to the tee, back to the landing zone, we're clear what's happening there. All right, we'll jump into rule 20, and this is, the perfect rule for the players who, if they need ruling, whether it's match play or stroke play, what do they do? How do they ask for that ruling? Or what if there's not an official there? What are they gonna do to keep play? And then for the committee, administratively, how do we, solve some of these rules issues during the round? So rule 20 covers all of that for us. For the players, resolving rules issues during the round, rulings under the rules, and then talking about situations not covered by the rules. What to do when a player is seeking a ruling. In match play, it's very different from stroke play as far as how you make a request for a ruling and the time limit to get that ruling. Playing 2 balls in match play is not an option. In stroke play, players do not have the same privileges as in match play to just decide between you and your opponent how we're going to do it. In stroke play, you're playing against 100 other players, 70 other players, depending on how large the field is. So you've got to treat that differently. You can't just decide what to do by agreement in your group. Playing 2 balls is an option in stroke play when you're uncertain how to proceed. And then we'll talk about how you as the committee, when someone comes up and says, hey, I played 2 balls on hole 5, how are we going to rule? What are the questions we're going to ask to get to that answer? Making rulings by the referee of the committee, what is our process? We'll talk briefly about applying the naked eye standard, but we don't really deal with video evidence in our events. When wrong rulings can be corrected, Andy mentioned it earlier, there are officials that have made a ruling mistake and there are officials that will make a ruling mistake. We all make these mistakes. How can we correct it and make it right for the player if we can do that in time? And disqualifying a player after a match or competition is final. We get a lot of phone calls in the office, hey, we realized after the tournament this player signed for a wrong score, what do we do? Or realize after the match they were playing with 15 clubs, what can we do? So we go to Rule 20 a lot to answer questions. And what to do when a situation is not covered by the rules, just make it up. So, they'll give us some guidance on how to treat the situation. So the purpose again, what players should do when they have a question about the rules during the round. So we're talking to the player now. What should the player do if they have a question? Their procedure to make that request for a ruling, whether it's match play, making the request for a ruling, or playing 2 balls in stroke play, and allowing their player again to protect the rights and get a ruling at a later time. Also, we're going to cover what referees are allowed to do. Again, we talked about this briefly earlier. Referees are going to decide questions of fact and apply the rules appropriately. Rulings from a referee or a committee are binding on the player. They have to accept that ruling. Again, they can ask for a second opinion, but once they get the ruling from the committee, they've got to proceed under that ruling. All right, players must avoid unreasonable delay. We'll go through each section here. For a player, again, don't delay play to seek a ruling. What do we do in match play? What do we do in stroke play? So players must not unreasonably delay play when seeking ruling in match play or stroke play. If a referee or the committee is not available to help with the rules issue, the players have to decide something and continue moving on. We got to keep playing. We got to keep pace of play going. Can't just drop anchor and wait there. The player, though, can protect their rights by asking for a ruling in match play so they can tell their opponent that, hey, I don't think this is right. I want to ask for a ruling when we get to see the committee. Or in stroke play, playing two balls. So there's two different procedures here. In match play, between the two players in the match, or the two sides in a 4-ball match play, they can decide how to proceed. They don't need to necessarily go find a committee. They can decide, hey, I can drop 2 club links in the sprinkler head, right? And, yeah, that sounds right. Go ahead. And that's okay, even if the procedure is not correct. So during a round, players in a match may agree how to decide a rules issue, even if the outcome is not correct according to the rules of golf. If it's wrong under the rules, that ruling is still going to, or that decision they made is still going to stand as played, so long as the players did not agree to ignore any rule or penalty they knew applied. So the big key here is they can agree to a procedure if it's incorrect. They can't agree to say, well, I just don't like dropping 1 club link from a sprinkler or 1 club link from an immovable obstruction. I'm going to drop 2. So the key here is you can agree if it's incorrect. You can't agree to purposely do something different. But if a referee is assigned to that match, so again, going back to, in our match play events, our first rounds, we're going to have 64 players, 32 players out there. We're not going to have 16 or 32 referees. So you're not going to be involved in that match. That's when they can make these decisions by agreement. And you don't really need to step in that case unless they call you in. But once we get down to maybe our final 16, our final 8, we're going to send referees out. So a referee is assigned to the match. The referee is going to rule on those issues. The players are not going to be allowed to, decide by agreement in that case. The referee is going to be the final authority, and the referee must, call any rules issue to the attention of the players in time, and the players must follow the ruling of that referee. And again, if there's not a referee, the players do not agree to the procedure. So the 2 players say, I think you can drop 1 club link. No, I think you can drop 2 club links. They can make a request for a ruling, and we'll go through that procedure. So they can say, okay, well, do what you need to, but I don't think that's right. I'm going to ask the committee for a ruling when we see them. So making a request for a ruling, how does that happen? How is the player going to do that? And how can the committee determine if that ruling was made, that request for ruling was made in time? So when a player wants the referee to decide how to apply the rules to their own play or the opponent's play, they make a request for a ruling. And this, again, is before the result of the match is final. So this is really during the match while they're out there playing, or before the winner's name has been put up on the board. If a referee is not available, the player make that request for a ruling. So here, I want a ruling on whether fixing aeration holes on the putting green is a penalty. So that's all you have to say to the play to your opponent, and that satisfies that part of it. Notifying the opponent that a later ruling will be sought when the committee becomes available. So here they're on the 3rd hole, nobody's there. Hey, I want to ask the referee, you fix those aeration holes, and then maybe they run into a referee on the 6th hole, or the committee at the turn, something like that. And they get that ruling there. If a player makes a request for a ruling before the result of the match is final, the ruling will only be given if it's made in time. So what does that mean when we're talking about making the ruling in time? Well, when the player becomes aware of the facts before the start of the final hole of the match. So we have these deadlines. It's really when you tee off on another hole or for the last hole of the match when you report those facts to the committee. So if either player has not started the final hole of the match, they can make that request for a ruling before they tee off on another hole in that match. That's their kind of time limit to make a request for a ruling. Once you play a hole, if you tee off on the next hole, you can't make a request for that ruling. And again, if it's during or after the final hole of the match, there's not another hole for us to tee off on. So you got to make that request for a ruling before we go up to the scoreboard and say, hey, John beat me 2-1. You got to, or 1 up in that case, or whatever it may be. So you got to make that request for a ruling. Again, if it's not the last hole before you tee off on the next hole, it's the last hole.
before you, report those results of the match to the committee. If the player does not make the request for a ruling in time, so maybe on the third hole, you know, you see that player drop 2 club links from that immovable obstruction, you know, you can't now say on the 5th hole, hey, back on hole 3, I think you dropped improperly. You know, your time limit was from hole 3 until you teed off on hole 4 in that case, because you saw everything that happened there. So a ruling will not be given, and the result of that hole will stand even if the rules were applied in the wrong way. So again, if you didn't make that request in time, whatever happened is going to stand as played in that case. If the player requests a ruling about an earlier hole, the ruling will only be given if all 3 of these scenarios apply. The opponent gave the wrong number of strokes or failed to tell the player about a penalty. Again, the request was made on facts not aware of the player. So in our scenario, where on hole number 3, you watch the player drop 2 club links in that immovable obstruction. But maybe on hole number 3, you were over there working on your shot, and the player dropped 2 club links, and then 2 holes later, the spectator says, hey, you know, back there on hole 3, they actually dropped 2 club links from the sprinkler head. That's now new information to you. So those are facts that you were not aware of in that case. So now you can make a request for ruling in an earlier hole in that scenario. And again, once you become aware, you're going to have that same time limit of before you tee off on the next hole, you got to make a request for that ruling, or on the last hole before you report the results of the match to the committee. So that's dealing with before the result of the match is final. Now, when the result of the match is final and a player wants to make a result of the ruling, you know, after the fact, these get a little more difficult. There's a little more tighter time limit, time constraints here. So when a player makes a request for a ruling after the result of the match is final, so what that means is, I know Bob beat me 2-1. Everyone knows 2-1, the match is over. But now I found something out, I want to make a request for a ruling. The committee will give the player a ruling only if both of these apply. The request is based on facts that I did not know before the result of the match is final. So if I find out now, hey, Bob had 15 clubs, that's new facts to me. I can now make a request for a ruling. And the opponent did not fail to tell me about a penalty that they had in that case, and knew of the breach before the result of the match was final. So I find out Bob had 15 clubs. I go to the committee and say, hey, Bob had 15 clubs that whole time. So what's the ruling? Well, then we're going to have to find out, did Bob know that he had 15 clubs? And if Bob says, oh, I had no idea, you know, in that case, you know, the match is going to stand its place. If Bob says, yeah, I always carry 15 clubs just to decide what it is, then the committee is going to be able to give a ruling on that after the result of the match is final. Pretty rare that all those are going to be met, but it can happen. There's no time limit on giving such a ruling in that case. In match play, there's no right for players to play 2 balls. Some players get confused and think, well, hey, in this match, you know, I'm going to play 2 balls, so I think this is ground under repair. That's not the procedure in match play. We try to tell them, you know, do what you think is right, and if your opponent doesn't like it, they can make that request for a ruling at that time. You know, don't play 2 balls in that case. That procedure, again, is only going to apply in stroke play. Any questions on making a request for a ruling or giving the answer? All right. Now talking about stroke play, again, this is the form of play that you're going to play, or you're going to be involved in officiating 90-95% of the time with the CGA. The group players do not have a right to decide rules issues by agreement in stroke play. So they can't just say, hey, I think that's ground under repair, go ahead and take the lead. That's not how it works in stroke play. The players are encouraged to help each other in applying the rules, but again, they do not have right to decide by an agreement, and maybe that player tells them the wrong ruling. If they proceed under that, that's on them. You know, they're not going to get out of that wrong ruling from a player. The committee is not binding to that decision made by them. All players should raise any rules issues with the committee before returning their scorecard. And this one is very important. Some people, especially in junior golf, they may be afraid about, I don't think what they did is right, but I don't want to be the bad guy or, you know, bad person to bring it up. But it's your duty under the rules of golf to bring up any rules issues to the committee. And the rule here says players should protect all other players in the competition. Again, it's not just you versus that threesome you're in. It's you versus that 100-player field, or you versus that 70-player field in that case. So if a player knows or believes that another player has breached or might have breached rules, so you may not be certain, but you just want to make sure that everything's on the up and up for the entire competition. The player should tell the other player, the marker, or the committee, and they should do so before they return their scorecard here. So big key here is, you don't necessarily need to tell them right then. Once you get to scoring, though, we have to tell them, hey, I think on hole 5, something came up there. I want to talk about it. You're not a bad person doing that. You're just doing your duty under the rules of golf to protect the field here. So they should do it before the other player returns their scorecard. And this gets pretty strongly worded. If the player fails to do this, they could potentially be disqualified if they decide to ignore it and the committee determines that that was a serious breach or misconduct in that case. So in stroke play, if a player does not know what to do or not sure how to proceed, a lot of times it's, hey, I think this is ground under repair. They have the option to play two balls under this rule, complete the hole with 2 balls, then report the fact to the committee to determine their score for the hole. So what is the procedure? The player must decide to play 2 balls after this doubtful or uncertain situation arises, and they must announce and follow the procedure before they make a stroke. So here we've got this ball, and the player thinks it's ground under repair. If they just hit this shot and hit a terrible shot and say, oh, well, that was ground under repair, I'm going to play 2 balls now. Well, it's too late now. Once they make a stroke, if they did not say I'm going to play 2 balls, then it does not apply. So before they make another stroke, the player would have to say, I've decided to play 2 balls here. And then they should choose which ball they want to count here. So, the player following the procedure correctly will say, hey, I think this is in ground under repair. I'm going to play this one as live. I'm going to take relief from this ground under repair, what I think is ground under repair, and I want that ball to count. That's pretty simple then. We just determine was it ground under repair or not. So the player should choose which ball will count if the rules allow for that procedure during for that ball by announcing the choice of their ball to the marker or another player before making other strokes. You got to do this again before you play any stroke now. If the player does not verbally choose, or the player does not choose which ball they want to count, the ball played first is going to be treated as the ball chosen. So that doesn't mean that's the ball that's going to count. It just means that's the one we've got to treat as the chosen ball for us as the committee to eventually apply a ruling here. So the player must report that they played 2 balls to the committee. So anytime they play 2 balls, even if they make the same score, they still have to come to the committee and say, hey, on hole 5, I played 2 balls. And we try to in scoring say, hey, any rules questions, any 2-ball questions to try to help them out. But they must report the fact to the committee. If they don't, they are disqualified because we really don't have a score for them for that hole in that case. So if a player makes a stroke before deciding to play the second ball, again, as I said, this 2-ball rule does not apply at all. The score counts with the original ball. The player is not going to get a penalty for playing that second ball. Maybe they were trying to do the right thing. They just didn't follow the procedure correctly. But that original ball is going to count, and no penalty or no strokes with that second ball will count. A second ball is not the same as a provisional ball. They're 2 separate things. You can't say, well, that provisional ball will be my second ball. That's not going to fly here. So now, for you as the committee, how do we determine their score for the hole when they come in and say, hey, on hole 5, I played 2 balls. So when a player plays 2 balls, the committee will decide the player's score by looking at the ball chosen. So again, the player may verbally or say, I want this ball to count, or it's chosen by the ball they played first. So first off, we have to find out, did you say which ball you wanted to count? If not, it's going to be the first ball. It's going to be the ball chosen in order to determine the score for the hole. So the score with the ball chosen, whether by the player or by default, is going to account if the rules allow for that procedure. So, in this case, back, you see that ball in potentially ground under repair. The player says, hey, I'm going to play 2 balls, doesn't say anything else, goes ahead, hits that ball out of the trench, and then takes relief from the ground under repair. Well, you could play that ball as it lies. The rules allow for that, so that ball would count in that situation, even though, yeah, it's ground under repair, but the ball chosen by default because you didn't say anything counts. The rules allow it. So that's how you would apply it in that case. But if the rules do not allow the ball chosen that procedure, So maybe they take release from the ground under repair and say, hey, I want this ball to count. But then us as the committee say, well, no, that's not ground under repair. So that ball chosen is not gonna count, and the score with the other ball played is gonna count in that case. So, you know, again, the big key is the ball the player chose, whether by doing it themselves or by default by playing that ball first. That's how we're gonna determine. So one of those balls is gonna count. If the rules do not allow either procedure for the ball chosen, the score with the ball chosen will count in that case, unless there was a serious breach playing that ball from the wrong place. And then in that case, the other ball counts. But that gets really extreme if you play both balls incorrectly and you have a serious breach involved there. If there was a serious breach in playing each ball, well, you've done it now, and you're just going to be disqualified. You're 0 for 2 in that case. All strokes with the ball that does not count, including any strokes made, any penalty strokes, are wiped out. They're not going to count in that player's score for the hole. Only the score with the ball chosen is going to count. And this really can come up. Maybe they, you know, hey, I want to take relief in this area. They take relief, and then maybe they hit that ball into a penalty area, and they end up making a 6 or 7 with this ground under repair ball. And, you know, they play the balls alive and hit a great shot and make a putt, and they make it 4. Well, they want to change their mind, but you're going to have to, whatever ball's chosen, we're going to count any of those strokes, any of those penalty strokes, unless that ball ends up not being chosen. So again, it's important that they announce which ball they want to count, and it's important then for them to report the facts to the committee. And an internal definition here, the rules allow the procedure used. And again, we talked about this, but this is written, means that either the original ball was played as it lies and play was allowed from there. That happens a lot where they don't say which one they want to count, and they play it as it lies, and well, that one's going to count now. Or the ball that was put into play under the right procedure, in the right place, in the right way, and in the right place under the rules, and we determined that that was ground under repair, or whatever it may be in that case. That's how that score would count. Any questions on playing 2 balls there? It's gotten a lot better. They cleaned that up a lot, and I think it makes a lot more sense for everyone involved in determining the score. All right, now we'll talk about for the committee rulings by a referee. A referee is a term that is an official name to the committee to decide questions of fact and apply rules. So you're a referee in match play or stroke play, but you may be a referee with that match. But then we're all going to be referees during stroke play. So the referee again may get help from the committee, get a second opinion before making that ruling, whether you're the referee with the match or again just a referee in stroke play. A referee's ruling on the facts of how the rules apply must be followed by the player. They're not allowed to say, no, I don't like that. But again, let's get a second opinion. Let's try to get it right and proceed on. Player has no right to appeal the ruling to the committee, but after a ruling has been made, again, get a second opinion out there. You know, we've got these relays that work really well now. Use those, get a second opinion. You'll hear, you know, I'm out there and I'm going to call Maggie and say, hey, just to clarify on hole 5, you know, this is happening, you know, talk to whoever's out there. You know, y'all are very smart rules officials. I'll call you on the radio and just clarify. Hey, make sure I'm doing this right. Refer the ruling to the committee for a review. But again, the committee is not required to do so, and the referee is not required to do so, but we encourage you all to do that. We want to get it right. We just don't want to say, hey, we're right and this is the answer. We want to get it right for those players. A referee's decision is final. If a referee allows a player to breach a rule in error, the player is not penalized. They're off the hook. Whatever you told them to do, they're going to be allowed to do. And we'll talk a little bit about wrong ruling when we correct that here in just a little bit. And we'll break down what are wrong rulings and what are administrative mistakes. There are 2 different topics here. So when there's no referee to give a ruling, or when the referee refers the ruling to the committee will hand down that ruling. The committee's ruling is final, and then you can escalate it even further. And we've called the USGA, Carolina Granite Pine Needles. Jack and I were sitting on the first hole, and we weren't playing any bunkers, and we just embedded ball, sand. Sometimes sand is, sometimes sand isn't embedded ball. So we called them, and hey, what do we recommend us doing here? And you know, they told us it's really sand filled divots and some other limited cases where they're embedded ball in. But you know, we just wanted to be certain, so we called the USGA just to get clarification. Carolina's and a couple years ago later. Now dealing with wrong rulings. Again, this never happens. We're perfect, so we can just skip right through these here. But what is a wrong ruling? We have an internal definition here. It has occurred when a referee or the committee has attempted to apply the rules, but has done so incorrectly. So, we're doing our best out there, but sometimes maybe I say, hey, you can drop 2 club links in that sprinkler head, and then wait, it's 1. So it can happen. Examples include applying a wrong penalty or failing to apply a penalty, applying a rule that does not apply or does not exist, or misinterpreting it and applying it incorrectly. If a ruling is found to be wrong, how can we correct that? What are our time limits? The ruling will be corrected if possible. If it's too late to do so, the wrong ruling stands. If a player takes an action in breach of a rule because of a reasonable misunderstanding of what the committee or what the referee is telling them there, they're not going to be subject to penalty during the round or while play is stopped. The instruction is treated like a wrong ruling. This may happen where, taking relief from whatever and they drop it, and it rolls out of the relief area. We'll pick it up and drop it again. They drop it and, whatever you say, they think you told them to pick it up again, but really the ball was in play. If there was a reasonable misunderstanding that what you told them, hey, pick that up again, they're not going to be subject to penalty there. Our instruction wasn't clear, so we can put it back and get that correct in that case. And there's 5 pages in here about time limits again. When can rulings be corrected? And there are certain thresholds and time limits about when these rulings can be corrected and if it seriously advantages or disadvantages a player. So some good reading. We won't read all that to you here, but in that committee procedure section 60, some good stuff there about how to correct wrong rulings. We go there a lot. We look in there a lot to get things right. Administrative mistakes are different from wrong rulings. They're procedural error in relation to administration of the competition. So this deals with counting up scores, saying who the winner is, things like that. There's no time limit for correcting such a mistake, even if the result of the match is final or competition is closed in a stroke play competition. And examples are miscalculating the result of a tie. Maybe we're using certain tiebreakers with scorecard playoff, not calculating a handicap correct, or awarding the prize to the wrong person for failing to post their score correctly. So any of these mistakes, we want to get it right and award the correct winner in that case. So the mistake should be corrected and the result should be amended accordingly. All right. In the unfortunate situation that we have to disqualify a player after the result of the match or the competition is closed and result is final, there's no time limit to disqualify a player if there's a breach of serious misconduct or a breach of your code of conduct policy, or if we find out that the player was deliberately ignoring rules or failing to apply penalties. In that case, we're agreeing to just waive rules in general. You can disqualify the player after the fact. And now there may be questions about when can the committee give a ruling. We're going to go back to what we talked about earlier. When a request is made after the result of the match is final, we're going to refer back to our rule and our time limits there about giving a ruling. In stroke play, normally a penalty must not be added or changed or corrected after the stroke play competition is closed. But in stroke play, okay, I'm sorry. What does it mean when a competition is closed? We define that on our hard card as competition is closed when we give the trophy to the winner, or in absence of that, we basically approve all the scores and maybe make a stroke play cut in a qualifier or something like that. Or in stroke play qualifying where you're playing match play, when the player is teed off to start their first match, that's going to close their stroke play competition then. So in stroke play, when can we adjust player score or apply a penalty of disqualification after the competition is closed? If a player returned a score for any hole lower than actually taken, except for if they fail to include penalty strokes. So maybe they call us the next day and say, hey, I was looking at scores and you had me down for a 5 on hole 7, but I made a 6. And we're going to ask them, well, what happened? And, well, I just misadded. Well, unfortunately, in that case, they're going to have to be disqualified. But if it's where, well, I didn't realize I had, that was a penalty area, something to that effect. But if the player did not include penalty strokes that they did not know about before the competition is closed, then we're not going to have to disqualify them. But in other cases, if they sign for a lower score than actually taken, even after the competition is closed, they'll be subject to disqualification. Or if they knew before the competition is closed that they were in breach of any rule where the penalty is disqualification, we can do that retroactively. Or they've agreed to ignore any rule or any penalty that they knew had applied. after the fact, we can apply the disqualification penalty. Or again, serious breach of code of conduct, even if the competition is closed, we can go back and make that correct under our code of conduct policy. Now, talking about situations not covered by the rules, what do we say? Just make it up and keep going. So, but no, they give you some guidance here in here. This is why Rule 20 is great. It's got a lot of stuff for you as a committee or you as the referee. So any situation not covered by the rules should be decided by the committee. They're pretty simple, but they're going to give you some guidance. Let's consider all the circumstances that are available. Treat the situation in a way that's reasonable, fair, consistent, and similar to other situations. So they used to try to say treat like things alike. They kind of amended it, but try to use other similar situations to try to get to the right answer if it's not covered under the rules of golf there. Hopefully no questions about that, because I can get over my skis and make this up.
All right, thank you. Well, it's good to see everybody, familiar faces and new faces. I'll reiterate what everybody before me has said. We appreciate all the time you donate to the CGA. Our success as we can't have all the success without you guys. We appreciate all the time you donate, like I said. So thank you again, and thanks for being here with us. So we're going to get into some of everybody's favorite part of the rule, some free relief. We talked a lot about penalties, and now we're going to go ahead and get into some free relief. So loose impediments and the movable obstructions that we may come across on the course. So Rule 15, like I just said, it covers loose impediments, movable obstructions, and then also a ball or a ball marker out on the course that could either help or interfere with play. We'll talk about how to handle those situations. So we get free relief from 4 types of readily movable objects that players will encounter out on the golf course. Those are loose impediments, movable obstructions, including when a ball is not found, and the golf balls of other players out there on the golf course, and then the ball markers of those players as well. So there is a distinction between loose impediments and movable obstructions, and that is natural objects versus artificial. And they are to a degree similar, but also they are very different. And then we'll cover in this rule movable obstructions, but there are 2 different types of obstructions, and the other one being immovable, such as a cart path. And we'll also cover the 2 types of relief for balls and ball markers, whether they are helping or interfering with play. So loose impediments, like I said, they are natural objects found out on the course. And then movable obstructions are those artificial objects, such as this ball washing station here or that trash can right next to it. So these objects, both the natural and artificial, are not part of the challenge of playing the course. And the player is normally allowed to remove these when they are interfering with their play. But as always, we need to be careful when we are moving these loose impediments, whether it is near the ball, when it's near our ball off the green, because if we move this loose impediment and cause our ball to move, there is a penalty that comes along with that. So now we're going to talk about what a loose impediment is if you don't already know. As I said, they are natural objects, but these are also unattached. So there's that other caveat to it, unattached natural objects such as stones, leaves, loose grass, pine straws we see a lot in this area, sticks, branches, anything that's loose. Dead animals and animal waste. We have not figured out what that image is on the left yet. We think it was a frog that just did not get out of the way of the mower, but rest in peace to Kermit. Also, worms, insects, and similar animals that can be removed easily, and the mounds and the webs that they build, such as worm casts and spider webs, and also clumps of compact soil, such as aeration plugs that may be out in fairways. But these objects are not loose if they are attached or growing. So if we see that branch that's still solidly stuck on that tree, that's not going to be loose. And anything that is solidly embedded in the ground, as we just can't get it out with easy with reasonable effort very easily, or if it is sticking to the ball, such as mud there. So there are some special cases in regards to loose impediments. So sand and loose soil are deemed not to be loose impediments. But this does not include a mound built by a worm, insect, or similar animal. Dew, frost, and water are not loose impediments. I know with some of our early starts out there, we still see a lot of dew on the course, but they are not loose impediments. And then snow and natural ice. This is a unique situation here. They are either loose impediments or when they are on the ground, temporary water at the player's discretion there. And spider webs are loose impediments even if they are attached to some other object. And if you come across this situation, you got this praying mantis on your ball, any live insect on the ball is going to be a loose impediment. And just give them the old flick and hopefully it'll hop away or fly away. Yep. And now we'll get into 15.1, which covers loose impediments and the removal of said loose impediments and what happens if our ball moves when we are trying to remove these loose impediments. So we have rights and restrictions when we are removing them, and then we also are taking a risk while we are moving loose impediments if it is near the ball. So without penalty, this is just straightforward. A player may remove a loose impediment anywhere on or off of the golf course, and they may do so in any way. It's not limited to these ways, but these are just common ways. You can use your hand or foot by kicking it, picking it up, tossing it out of the way. You use your club or any other equipment that you have on you. And you can get help from others. I know we all might be familiar with that video of Tiger getting the whole gallery to help move that big rock. So you can certainly get assistance from others. And also, you can also break off a part of a loose impediment. If you have a huge tree branch that's down on the ground and some of that branch can be broken off since it is not technically attached to anything. But there are two exceptions. So exception 1 is the removal of a loose impediment when we must replace the ball. So for example, if a player is searching for their ball in leaves, especially in the fall time, they're kicking around searching for their ball, accidentally cause it to move. When we are replacing that ball, we cannot remove any of those leaves that were on that spot because we are replacing. And if we were to then remove this loose impediment before, I'm sorry. If removing this would have caused the ball to move, if the ball had already been there, we cannot remove that loose impediment because there's that risk of that ball moving. And if we do so if we have to replace the ball and we clear out that area of the leaves or whatever it is, we're going to give that player a 1-shot penalty, but the loose impediment does not need to be replaced in that situation. And this applies both during the round and while play is stopped under 5-7. So this is a clarification on this exception. So exception 1 to Rule 15A makes it clear that before replacing a ball, the player must not remove a loose impediment that if it was moved when the ball was at rest and would have likely caused the ball to move, we can't remove that loose impediment. And this is because when the ball's in that location, the player is risking moving that ball by removing that loose impediment. However, if we are dropping or placing, so such as taking penalty area relief, the ball is not being put back on a specific spot. We don't own a spot in that situation. So therefore we can remove loose impediments before we are dropping, or if we've dropped twice and have to place, we can also remove loose impediments in that situation because we do not own a spot. Now, this does not apply to loose impediment that was not there before the ball was lifted or moved, or if it's removed as a result of marking the spot of the ball, or lifting, moving, or replacing a ball, or causing a ball to move. So now exception 2 is going to go into rule 11.3, and that's the deliberate removal of loose impediments to affect a ball in motion. So we will refer to 11.3 if we come across that. So now we're going to talk about what happens if a ball is moved when we are removing a loose impediment. So if this removal does end up causing the ball to move, that ball must be replaced on the original spot. We'll see here in this example. There we go. They were trying to move some of those pine straws. Ball moved. They just picked it up, put it back right on that same spot. No problem. But we are going to give them 1 penalty. There's no problem when they put it back. But we still have a problem. We still have a problem. Not a major problem. Small. And if the ball must be replaced, which if not known, we are just going to estimate that spot. I think in that situation, we can kind of clearly see where that ball was at rest before. But if we don't know that exact spot, which in some cases it's going to be hard to do, we're just going to do our best estimation. So if the move ball had been at rest anywhere except, and that means anywhere except in the general area, a bunker, or the penalty area, player is going to get 1 penalty stroke. There's no penalty on the putting green or in the teeing area. So and this is all the exception here is when 7.4 applies. So there's no penalty for a ball move during a ball search, or this exception under 9.4. The players are allowed to lift or move a ball, accidental movement trying to find or identify the ball, accidental movement on the putting green, and then accidental movement anywhere except on the putting green while applying a rule. So if we cause the ball to move and we do not replace it on that spot, we are going to have a wrong place penalty, and that's the general penalty: 2 strokes in stroke play and loss of hole in match play. So now into movable obstructions. As I said, there are 2 different types of obstructions, movable and immovable, but we're just going to focus on movable obstructions here. And that definition is, as I said earlier, is any artificial object, and this is just of an obstruction. And this is an except for integral objects and boundary objects. So some examples of obstructions are artificially surfaced roads and paths, such as cart paths, obviously. And this includes their artificial borders, any buildings and rain shelters that come out there on the course, sprinkler heads, drains, and irrigation and control boxes, and stakes, walls, railings, and fences, but not when they are boundary objects that define or show the boundary edge of the course. And golf carts, and if we have any mowers out there on the course while we're playing. Hopefully we don't have any mowers out there while play is going on, but if we do, they're an obstruction. And waste containers, signposts, benches, that ball washing station we saw earlier, these are obstructions. And the player's equipment, the flag stick, and rakes are all, they fall under this category as well. Said it before and I'll say it again, we have these 2 types of obstructions, movable and immovable. So if part of an immovable obstruction, such as a gate or a door that is part of an attached cable, I'm sorry. If it meets the definition of a movable obstruction, such as this gate here in this fence, then that part is treated as movable. So paint dots and lines, we love to use lines and dots out there on the course, more marking. So these are not obstructions. And then we can also define certain obstructions as temporary movable obstructions. You may know them as TIOs, such as some of our CGA signage out there during competitions. We're going to call those temporary movable obstructions. While they could be moved, we're not going to move them. We're going to leave them there. So the definition of a movable obstruction is an obstruction that can be moved with reasonable effort and without damaging the obstruction itself or the golf course. If part of a movable obstruction meets both of those standards, we can move it with reasonable effort and without causing damage to that obstruction itself or the course, then that part is treated as a movable obstruction. Once again, this example of this gate here as part of this fence. But it does not apply if the movable part of an immovable obstruction or integral object is not meant to be moved. So if we're using this stone wall as either an immovable obstruction or integral object, and some of those stones, while they may be loose, we're going to treat them as part of the immovable obstruction or integral object, so they cannot be moved. And even when an obstruction is movable, we, the committee, we have the option to define it as an immovable obstruction. So, we could remove some of these logs or whatever you want to call them as part of this fence, but we don't want to do that because we might not be able to get that fence back to normal. So in a situation like that, we could just deem it as an immovable obstruction. Now we'll cover the relief from movable obstructions and a relief for a ball that is not found, but it is known to be in or on a movable obstruction. So there are no risks when we are taking relief from a movable obstruction, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. So we get free relief from movable obstructions, and that these are artificial objects out there on the course. But it does not give relief from immovable obstructions. This is a different type of relief that is covered under Rule 16. And this also does not cover integral objects or boundary objects where no relief is allowed. No free relief is allowed. So without penalty, the player may remove a movable obstruction that is anywhere on or off the golf course, and they may do so once again in any way. But there are two exceptions, of course. So the first one is tee markers must not be moved when a ball will be played from the teeing area. And that second exception is the restrictions on deliberately removing a movable obstruction to affect a ball in motion. We're going to refer to Rule 11 there. And free relief does not apply in that situation. So when we are removing a movable obstruction, such as if a ball is up next to a rake in a bunker, if the player's ball moves while we are removing this movable obstruction, there is no penalty to the player, and the ball must be replaced on its original spot. And if we don't know that exact original spot, we will give it our best estimation and get it back on that spot. So then if a ball is in or on a movable obstruction, if this is known and it's anywhere on the course except on the putting green, player may take free relief by lifting the ball and removing the movable obstruction and then dropping either the original ball or another ball in this defined relief area. So we're going to have to first establish our reference point, which is going to be right under where the ball was at rest, either in or on that movable obstruction. So right under this spot where the ball is at rest on that towel. And then, so that's going to be our reference point. And then we get one club length from that reference point, no closer to the hole, as always. And it must be in the same area of the course as that reference point. So that's anywhere that is not on the putting green. So now if we are dealing with a ball either in or on a movable obstruction that is on the putting green, we still get free relief. And we're going to do this by lifting that ball and removing the movable obstruction. And then we're simply going to place the original ball or another ball on that estimated spot right under where it was at rest on that movable obstruction. So if that towel in that last example was on the putting green, we would just place it right on that spot that was under the towel. And we'll use the procedures for replacing a ball under 14.2B2 and 14.2E. That's just what this new pop-up explains. I don't know if y'all saw that. I'll go back and we'll do that again. So there's a ball. It's getting ready to fly into that trash can there. You see it coming in there. I don't know if I'd go digging around in that trash for that. I don't know. But so now this is for if a ball is not found, but it is known that it is either in or on a movable obstruction. So if it is known or virtually certain that the player's ball came to rest in or on a movable obstruction that's on the course, then we are going to use this relief option instead of taking stroke and distance relief. So we're going to get free relief under 15.2A2, which we just covered right before this. So we see it go in there again. So we're going to take free relief. So we're going to use the estimated point of right under where that ball last crossed the edge of the movable obstruction. So it crossed right on that corner of that trash can there. So that's going to be our reference point there. And then once the player puts another ball in play to take relief in this way, the original ball is no longer in play, and it must not be played, even if we find it on the course before the end of the 3-minute search. So as soon as we put another ball into play by taking relief under this rule, and we find that original ball, it must not be played. But so we have to have that knowledge of virtual certainty that it is in that movable obstruction. But if it is not known or virtually certain that that it came to rest in or on that movable obstruction, then the ball is deemed lost and the player must take stroke and distance relief and return to where they last played from. So hopefully somebody sees it go into the trash can. And if we play from a wrong place under this rule, we're going to get the general penalty, 2 strokes in stroke play, and loss of hole in match play. Any questions? Wonderful. We'll keep moving. So now we'll get into a golf ball or a ball marker helping or interfering with play. So there are 3 sections to this. So we'll first talk about when the ball's on the putting green and there is some help there. And then a ball anywhere else on the course that is interfering with play. And then we'll discuss in 15.3C, ball marker helping or interfering with play. So this rule 15.3A applies only to a ball that is at rest on the putting green and not anywhere else on the course. We'll talk about the other areas of the course after this particular section. So if any player reasonably believes that a ball on the putting green may help anyone's play, such as serving as a backstop for somebody's downhill putt, that player may, if it's their own ball, mark the spot of the ball and lift it under putting green rule 13.1B. If it's this is only if it's their ball. And if it's another player's ball that they believe may help, they can require that player to mark the spot of the ball and then lift the ball out of play. Then it must be replaced on its original spot when it is obviously that player's time to play. So only in stroke play, a player who is required to lift a ball, they may play first instead. And we know this a lot in some of these short putt scenarios where somebody still has a 5-6 footer, but somebody who played before may have just rolled a couple feet past and may be in their line. And, it may obviously help or interfere with their play. So we can just go ahead and have that player finish out if they wish. And if 2 or more players agree in stroke play to leave a ball in place to help any player, and then that player goes on to make a stroke with the helping ball left in place, each player who made that agreement is going to get the general penalty. And in stroke play, this is 2 strokes. This is just clarification on 15.3A. So the breach of rule for leaving a helping ball in place does not require knowledge. So in stroke play, if 2 or more players agree to leave a ball in place on the putting green to help any player, and that stroke is made with that helping ball left in place, and each player who made the agreement is going to get 2 strokes. And a breach of this rule does not depend on whether the players know that such agreement is not allowed. Now, if the players know that they are not allowed to make such agreement and they still do it, then we're going to disqualify them for deliberately ignoring the rules. So even if they don't know, they're not going to get away with it. And this is just some guidance for best practices to help prevent backstopping. And I believe this might be in the Richard Tufts book, I believe. I guess the specific part of this is, so talk about stroke play. So therefore in stroke play, if there's a reasonable possibility that a player's ball close to the hole could help any player who is about to play from off the green, both players should ensure that the player whose ball is close to the hole marks and lists that ball before the other player plays. It's just a good practice for our players to do that, obviously, because we don't obviously want to have to penalize them. So we want to try and help them in any way that we can. So now getting off of the putting green. So if a ball anywhere on the course is interfering with play, we have 2 distinctions here. So the meaning of interference by another player's ball, and then when relief is allowed from an interfering ball. So we have an internal definition of interfering with play. So the meaning of interference by another player's ball is the interference under this rule exists when another player's ball at rest might interfere with the player's area of intended stance or area of intended swing, is on or close to the player's line of play, such that given the intended stroke, there's a reasonable chance that the player's ball in motion could hit that ball. So if we see a player that's going to be putting off the edge of the putting green, and there's another ball in front of them, the player can make that determination if there's going to be interference there. Or if it is close enough to distract the player in making the stroke, then there is interference here. So if a player reasonably believes that another player's ball anywhere on the course might interfere with their own play, we're talking about just the player itself who thinks they have interference, the player may require the other player to mark the spot of their ball and lift it out of play. And if this does happen, that player who takes their ball out of play must not clean their ball. Now, except on the putting green, we know that we can clean our ball when our ball's at rest on the putting green. And then we must replace it on the original spot. So if the other player, the player who's been requested to mark the spot of their ball, does not mark the spot of the ball before lifting it, or if they clean the ball when not allowed, we're going to tack on 1 penalty stroke to their score for that hole there. So in stroke play only, a player that is required to lift their ball under this rule may play first instead. We just said that a second ago. Yes, sir.
One player play. Second player required to go into the pit.
No, I don't believe so. Sorry. So you would place it in a lie that is most similar to what you had before your lie was altered there, within 1 club length. It's a good question. And no closer to the hole. Anything else? It's one of those situations, as we said earlier, you get asked and then you just kind of freeze like I just did. Your mind just goes blank. It's a good question though. So I'll say it again, in stroke play only, a player that is required to lift their ball, they may play first instead. We talked about that a couple minutes ago as well. This is not going to apply when a player is not allowed to lift their ball under this rule, based only on the player's own belief that the ball might interfere with another player's play. So we have to be requested to move the ball. We can't just make an assumption. If the player lifts their ball when not required to do so by the other player, except on the putting green, then that player is going to get 1 penalty stroke for causing their ball to move. So there has to be that request there. So now we'll get into ball marker, whether it is helping or interfering with play. And then we'll talk about the definition of a ball marker, which is an artificial object that is used to mark the spot of a ball that is to be lifted out of play, such as a tee, a coin, or an object that is made to be a ball marker or another small piece of equipment. And what a rule refers to a ball marker being moved. This means a ball marker that is in place on the course to mark the spot of the ball and that has been lifted and not yet replaced. And I'll just go back to this real quick. If you're familiar with the Jay Roberts video explaining what a ball marker is, it's not just limited to these. I mean, we've seen his example. He uses a shoe, his phone, his glove. It's not just limited to these. I hope nobody's taking their shoe off to mark the spot of the ball, but if somebody does, they'll be all right. So if a ball marker is, if it might help or interfere with play, player may move the ball marker out of the way if it is their own. So we know this, if we just take the putter head and move it out of the way, we know it as that. Or if the ball marker belongs to another player, we can require that player to move the ball marker out of the way for the same reasons as we mentioned in the previous slides. So in this case, the ball marker must be moved out of the way to a new spot, measured from its original spot, such as by using one or more club head lengths. And when moving this ball marker back, the player should do so. They're not required, but they should do so by measuring from the new spot and reversing the steps that were used to move that ball marker out of the way. So there's not a requirement here, but it is a good practice for the player to do this. And the same process should be applied if a player moves an interfering ball out of the way by measuring from that ball. And the penalty for breach of this rule is going to be the general penalty, 2 strokes in stroke play and loss of hole in match play. And the penalty also applies if the player makes a stroke without waiting for a helping ball or ball marker to be lifted or moved, or after becoming aware that another player, one, intended to lift or move it under this rule, or had required someone else to do so. This penalty is also going to apply if the player refuses to lift the ball or ball marker when required to do so, and a stroke is then made by the other player whose play might have been helped or interfered with. So hopefully we don't have players refusing. And the penalty for playing from a wrong place is general penalty, as we know, 2 strokes in stroke play and loss of hole in match play.
We'll keep this thing moving. Make all the jokes about y'all being hungry, but I'm starving. So I want to first off introduce myself. My name is Chris Zay, Director of Junior Golf with the CGA, for those of you that don't know me. And if you really want to get into the rules of golf, come to a junior event. We have plenty of opportunity for you to learn a lot. Crazy things happen there. And I always think sometimes you guys leave like, man, these events are chaos. But I swear it's the juniors. It's not me. But on behalf of the CGA, I'm going on my 12th year, I think. I want to thank all of you for what you do. I'm excited when we see you at tournaments. I know our emails are brief. And at the end, you come to us at scoring and just toss us your flag and your radios and say, see you later. But we really are thankful for everything you do out there that we do know about, and some of the things we don't know about that you do out there. But we hope you enjoy your times when you're coming. We hope that you like to be there. I think I fought Rusty on the radios hard on those relays, but I'm excited that we're using the relays and that we can actually talk to you all out there again. For a couple of years in there, you all were just sitting out there in La La Land. We didn't really have radios, or communication wasn't great, but I feel like we're moving back to the old way where we could actually talk to each other and talk rulings and make sure we don't mess anything up. So thank you all for what you do and being out there with us. I'm going to talk about Rule 16, relief from abnormal course conditions. And this is straight out of the book. I don't want to be too boring, but I'm going to read that. I don't have any stories about working Augusta National like Andy. But we can talk about some Tiger Talks events or some other fun events that I run. So Rule 16, the purpose statement here, you got 16.1, abnormal course conditions, or as they say, ACC. You might hear some more veteran officials say ACC for short. 16.2, we'll talk about dangerous animal conditions. 16.3, embedded ball, and then 16.4, lifting the ball to see if it lies in a condition where relief is allowed. So we'll knock all these out before lunch, and then we'll get some yummy food here. So 4 types of abnormal course conditions. You have animal holes, ground under repair, immovable obstructions, and temporary water. And we're talking about relief procedures for all of those, and relief procedures from dangerous animal conditions, and then free relief from embedded ball in the general area, and then again lifting to see if you do get relief from something. So 16 covers when and how the player may take free relief by playing a ball from a different place, such as when there's interference by an abnormal course condition or a dangerous animal. And these conditions are not treated as part of the challenge of playing the course. So Kart Pass, when they made up the rules, they were not really a challenge playing the course, so we're going to give free relief from them. The player normally takes relief by dropping a ball in a relief area based on the nearest point of complete relief, and this rule also covers free relief when the player's ball is embedded in its own pitch mark. So again, here we go. Abnormal course conditions. You have animal holes, ground under repair. And look at that picture, man. Talk about updating the slides. I like that one. We're going to put you guys back in some coats there with our badges. Some of you, we don't trust you all with a paint gun, and but I do want some of you younger officials to know that we try to go out and mark the course in advance, but we don't catch everything. Okay, so if you're out there and a player hits it in an area like that, you can call us in, or if you're pretty confident, sometimes I'll tell you over the radio, if you're confident that area should be ground under repair, I'm okay with you giving relief, and then we'll come mark it when we get a chance. So you don't always have to say no right away. You can always call us over the radio. You might call us over the radio and we say, yeah, we looked at that spot and we decided that it's not abnormal. There's some other areas on the course that are just like that. So please play on. So ground under repair is something that typically the committee, the CJ staff will do in advance, but again, we do miss some. So ground under repair is something that we do. You are part of the committee when you're there. So if you do give relief from something we said no, that's okay. As Rusty says, we figure it out. So what's an animal hole? By definition, any hole dug in the ground by an animal, except for holes dug by animals that are also defined as loose impediments, such as worms or insects. Always read your definitions. The term animal hole also includes loose material that's right outside the hole, or any worn down track or trail leading into the hole, or any area of ground pushed up or altered. So I have a lot of animal holes in my yard. An animal hole does not include animal footprints, and that's crucial. If you're taking the rules test, that's going to be on there. I can promise you that. Also brag on our committee. We all took except Rusty and Maggie, but I'm sure they'll do well. But we all did the rules test. We all did pretty good there. But animal hole, this will be on there. So footprints like this is not an animal hole. Any living member of an animal kingdom, this will probably be on there too, including mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians. And I don't know how to say the next word, and invertebrates such as worms, insects, spiders, and crustaceans. Definition of ground under repair: any part of the course the committee defines to be ground under repair. And any grass, bush, tree, or other growing or attached natural object rooted in the defined area. Any parts of those objects that stand up above the ground outside the area. So we try not to mark trees and ground under repair too much, because then you're getting relief from the overhanging branches. We try to keep trees out of ground under repair as much as possible. For you new staff, remember that. But when an object is attached on the ground or below the outside the defined areas, such as tree roots, you're not going to get relief from that. So if we do put a tree in there, but there's tree roots, you're not going to get relief from the tree roots extended outside. So here's a great picture for that. Now, if a branch was overhanging right above that, you're going to get relief from that, but the tree roots down there, not going to get relief from that. Ground under repair also includes the following, even if the committee does not define them as such. So any hole made by the committee or maintenance staff in setting up the course or maintaining the course. And this is pretty common right now. A lot of drainage courses going through some drainage maintenance. Grass cuttings is always one of our favorites. I've been doing this for 15 years. I think maybe twice I've ever had this issue, but man, we talk about it every year. So grass cuttings that are piled for removal later. I don't know any clubs that do this anymore, but it must have been a common practice when they wrote the rules back in the day. Typically, you'll see them spread out. If they're spread out and on the ground, we're not going to do that. But if it's still piled, we'll give you relief. So any natural materials that are piled for removal are also loose impediments. But any materials left on the course that are not intended, like this picture here, are not ground under repair unless we define it. Any animal habitat, such as bird's nest, that is so near a player's ball that a player's stroke or stance might damage it, except when the habitat has been made by animals that are defined by loose impediments. So I would probably still give you relief from that upper picture, but the edge of ground under repair should be defined by stakes, lines, or physical features. So when defined by stakes, the edge of the ground under repair is defined by the line between the outside points of the stakes at ground level. And in our events, we're 99% of the time going to have white lines. So when defined by painted lines on the ground, the edge of the ground under repair is the outside edge of the line. The line itself is ground under repair. So if their ball is touching the line, we're going to give them relief. If they're standing on that line, we're going to give them relief. And you can use physical features such as flower beds, or here we could say the edge of the mulch would be defining the ground under repair if we don't want to paint a white line around that because it looks kind of ugly and it's supposed to look pretty. When the edge of the ground under repair is defined by lines and physical features, stakes may be used just to show. So sometimes we might put stakes out in the middle of the fairway so they're not driving their carts through it, kind of give them an alert like, hey, here's ground repair. We try not to use white stakes just to avoid any confusion. Players aren't the smartest, but we will put them there so that they don't drive their carts through them. And these would just be obstructions if they're there. An artificial object, any artificial object is, I'm sorry, butchered that one. Any artificial object is an obstruction except integral objects. Rusty kind of talked about that in the hard card, or boundary objects. Examples of obstructions are artificially served surface roads and paths, including their artificial borders, buildings and rain shelters, sprinkler heads are probably the most common, drains, irrigation boxes, stakes, walls, railings, fences, but not when they are boundary objects. Golf carts, mowers, cars, and other vehicles, waste containers, signposts, and benches. Anybody have a question about what an obstruction is? Players' equipment, flag sticks, and rakes. An obstruction is either movable or immovable. Pretty simple. You can either move it or you can't. An obstruction that cannot be moved without unreasonable effort or without damaging an obstruction or the course, and otherwise does not meet the definition of movable obstruction, is a movable obstruction is immovable. And the committee may define any obstruction to be an immovable obstruction, even if it meets the definition of movable obstruction. And you guys always catch me early in the morning. Hey, how are we treating these split rail fences? We typically treat split rail fences as both. So you can move it, the piece that can be moved, but if it's maybe the pole staying straight up, we would treat that as immovable. Temporary water, kind of talked about that in the last one. Any temporary accumulation of water on the surface of the ground, that'll be on the rules test. I didn't write the rules test, but I just know the ones they try to trick you on, such as puddles from rain or irrigation or overflow of body of water that is not in a penalty area. Can be seen before or after the player takes their stance. So it needs to be seen. It can't just be there for a brief second. It's got to be there while they're standing, taking their stance. As Rusty always says, take your stance, don't dance. And it is not enough for ground to be merely wet, muddy, soft, but we probably would give relief from something like that. Or for water to be momentarily visible, as I just said. So it's got to be there while you're taking your stance, not just for a brief second as the player steps on the ground. An accumulation of water must remain present either before or after they take their stance. Special cases, dew and frost are not temporary water. Snow and natural ice are either loose impediments or when on the ground, temporary water at the player's option. And when you think that over, I know this is wordy and I'm just trying to get you all to lunch, but when you think that over, it makes sense why snow, natural ice would be considered either loose impediments or temporary water. Go play in the snow and then you'll really get it figured out. Manufactured ice is an obstruction. Sorry. Rolled through there. All right. So what do we do? 16.1. This rule covers free relief. So we're the good guys here. And this is what is all about in officiating. You want to help the player out. So we want to give them relief from those 4 scenarios. From ACC. This rule does not give relief from movable obstructions, as Hogan covered that already. And we do not get relief from boundary objects. So that's a very important new official. That's a very important one. We're not getting relief from a boundary fence. Or when I officiated here, you didn't for the U.S. Junior, gentleman's ball was under the clubhouse, but it was a boundary out of bounds, so it did not get relief from it. Artificial objects defining or showing out of bounds, such as walls, fences, stakes, and railings, from which free relief is not allowed, is a boundary object. So that's the definition there. And this includes any base or post of the boundary object fence, but does not include angle supports or guy wires that are attached to the wall or fence. And this will always come up. So I don't know if you can see so this does not include a boundary object right here. Any gate, steps, bridge, or similar construction used for getting over or through the wall or fence is not considered a boundary object. I think that was a great change they made a few years back. And boundary objects are treated as immovable, even if they are movable, or any part of them is movable. So you can go back, make sure you read that. 8.1. Boundary objects are not obstructions or integral objects, so they have their own category. An integral object, any artificial object defined by the committee as part of challenging of playing the course from which free relief is not allowed. And integral objects are treated as immovable. But if part of an integral object meets the definition of movable, that part is treated as movable. So you can open that gate there. Artificial objects defined by the committee as integral objects are not obstructions or boundary objects. So again, it's important to know this terminology when you're reading your rule sheet in the morning. So how are we going to do? We're going to begin with some definitions. We're going to stay on the definition. Nearest point of complete relief. The reference point for taking for free relief. I like to call it R&R. So we got to get our reference point, and then our relief area. So the first thing when we're taking complete relief is our reference point. And this is for these, is it 4 here? Abnormal course conditions, dangerous animal conditions, wrong green, or no play zone, or taking relief under certain local rules. So reference point for free relief is the estimated point where the ball would lie that is nearest to the ball's original spot, but not near the hole than that spot. So you can't go near the hole. In this scenario, you'll see that the player might want to go over here to the right, but that's 6 feet away from the ball. Over here on the left is 4 feet. This is in the required area of the course, so it's not in a penalty area there. Where there's no interference from which the condition from which relief is being taken, or the stroke that the player would have made from the original spot if the condition were not there. So again, this is not part of the original rules of golf to play off a cart path. So we want to give you relief from that. And we're going to go to the left side there. Okay, so I've seen this video 1,000 times. I probably could narrate it for you. Probably couldn't hear that much, but you don't have to make a player go measure out all of those. If it's clearly going to be behind, just go ahead and move them there. Okay, so let's keep things moving. But in the end, it's not bad to double check. If it was between 4 feet and 5 feet, I might actually measure, have them lay a club out and measure. But if it's clearly 2 feet behind, then we're going to go there. So it might be further backwards from the hole, but that's your nearest point. And estimating the reference point requires the player to identify the choice of club, stance, swing, and line of play. So I think I've told that story before. You can't take abnormal stance for it. You really just want to say, hey, I'm going to hit 7-iron here. Just ask the player. I always pull up and say, all right, what club do you think you're going to hit here? Go grab it and show me what's going on. So that's a good habit to get into. The player does not need to simulate the stroke by taking an actual stance and swinging with the chosen club, but it's recommended that the player normally does this to help in making an accurate estimate. So again, I always just say, go grab whatever club, especially with the juniors. I just want to get them into that habit of not looking any appearance of evil over there. Go grab your club. Let's get it figured out. The nearest point of complete relief relates solely to that particular condition from which relief is taken. So here, we're taking relief from that man-made cart path. We don't care that that tree is now going to be in your way. That's up to you to decide. And it may be in a location where there's interference by something else. Sorry, Maggie, the last one over there is unmute. All right, so here the player's nearest point of relief isn't their nicest point of relief. That's what they like to say, the joke we like to make. So their best option is actually just play it as it lies off that cart path. Although, yeah, they want to go over to the left side, but that's not their nearest point. If the player takes relief and then has interference by another condition from which relief is allowed, the player, they may take relief again by determining a new nearest point of complete relief from this new condition. We should have gone out there on 18 today after all that storms, and we would have had a ton of this going on. So, but relief must be taken separately from each condition. So you can't just say, well, there's a puddle right here. Here's a cart path. Here's the puddle. That's where I got to drop, but I'm just going to go all the way on the other side of the puddle. No, you're going to drop from the cart path into the puddle. Then we're going to get you relief from the puddle, which might be either side. At that point, you can call in one of us and we'll say, all right, now let's just go ahead and move them over. But so except that the player may take relief from both conditions at the same time when having already taken relief separately from each condition. So we want you to at least do both conditions. And then at that point, like I said, we'll go ahead and find you a place to play from. Any questions on nearest point of complete relief? Not nicest, nearest. And even the juniors, they'll try to get you. They will try to, the players they know what they're doing. So when is relief allowed? When are we going to find that nearest point? We're going to do it when interference exists, when any of these are true. The player's ball touches or is in or on. That makes sense, right? An abnormal course condition physically interferes with the player's area of intended stance or swing. And new officials, this is one they'll get you on. This gentleman in this bottom picture, yes, his swing is being interfered with by that box there. But we do not get relief for line of play on those. So if he was another 4 feet back in those bushes, he would not get relief from that, even if those bushes were not there. Only when the ball is on the putting green, an abnormal course condition on or off the putting green interferes with the line of play. So this can come into play. This is one of those tricky ones they'll try to get you on. Again, so if your ball is on the putting green and the abnormal course condition is on or off the putting green and intervenes with your line of play, remember that, on or off. If the abnormal course condition is close enough to distract the player but does not meet any of the requirements, there's no mental interference by this. And there are some good PGA Tour rulings I've seen where they have not given relief, and the players from this exact picture right here, and the player's like, well, it's right here, but no relief. It's not interfering with their stance, swing, or live ball, so we're going to play on. Relief allowed anywhere on the course, except when the ball is in penalty area. So we're not getting relief from that. if our ball's inside the penalty area. And that's why it's important to know your definitions and when a ball is in or out of a penalty area. Relief from interference by an abnormal course condition is allowed under 16-1 only when both the abnormal course condition is on the course and the ball is anywhere on the course except in the penalty area. So in this one, I think is Victor Hovland. You can see the red line right there under his foot. So he was inside the penalty area. So therefore, that cart path, he did not get relief from that cart path. And oftentimes when we're marking the day before tournament, we will try to keep that red line as close to the cart path as possible. So had he wanted to take relief, penalty area relief, he would have just dropped it on the cart path and then had to take free relief from the abnormal course condition on the other side. So, but he decided to play here. No relief when it's clearly unreasonable. So Andy touched on that when he told Bubba, I'm not giving you relief from whatever the line of play was. If your ball is stuck in a rock like that in the bottom. So when the ball as it lies is clearly unreasonable because of something from which the player is not allowed to take relief. So you can't play out of that rock. We're not going to give you relief because you're standing on a cart path. And when interference exists only because a player chose a type of club or stance or swing, that is clearly unreasonable. So I think people probably heard that story about Seve, and I can't remember who he was playing, but they both hit their ball over the hill, and the other player rushed up there and came upon a ball that was in a big divot, and the player looked at Seve and said, "Do I get relief?" I'm standing on a sprinkler head, and he's standing like this. And had his leg way back there, and clearly unreasonable that he would stand like that. But he was saying he was on a sprinkler head, and Seve said, "No, no, no." And the guy said, "Well, good, because that's your ball." So again, they will try to get you, but if it's clearly unreasonable, we're not giving relief. So here's the perfect video for it. You wouldn't stand like that. That's not how he took his stance. So obstruction interfering with the abnormal stroke may not preclude a player from taking relief. In some situations, a player may have adopted an abnormal stance or swing. So if there's a tree in the way and we got to flip it over and play left-handed or right, or Phil Mickelson, I'm not going to tell Phil Mickelson he can't hit a ball 180 yards right-handed. I'm sure he can. So if the abnormal stroke is not clearly unreasonable, the player is permitted to take free relief. For example, in the general area, right-handed player's ball is so close to a boundary object that they must make a left-handed swing and play towards the hole. In making that left-handed swing, the player's stance is interfered with by an immovable obstruction. The player's allowed relief from the immovable obstruction, and a left-handed swing is not clearly unreasonable in these circumstances. So after the relief procedure, though, for the left-handed swing is complete, the player may then use a normal right-handed swing. So that's a little tricky one that it's important to know, and you can help a player get out of a situation. I don't know how many juniors can do it yet, but there are some athletes out there that can flip it over. We have people on staff that whiff the right-handed when they are right-handed. So all right. So again, the player must either play the ball as it lies or take unplayable relief if it's clearly unreasonable. So for example, in the general area, right-handed player's ball is in a bad lie. A nearby immovable obstruction would not interfere with the player's normal right-handed stroke, but would interfere with the left-handed stroke. The player states that they're going to make the next stroke left-handed. I'm looking at them. Come on. Why are you wasting my time? Let's go. All right. You're just trying to get relief from this. However, since the only reason for the player to make the left-handed stroke is to escape a bad lie by taking relief, use of the left-handed stroke is clearly unreasonable, and the player is not allowed to take relief. And you can always offer the second opinion, like Andy said. They might want one in this kind of scenario, but so relief for a ball in general area, if the player's ball in general area and there's interference by an abnormal course condition on the course, the player may take free relief by dropping the original ball or another ball. So we're going to find our reference point, which is the nearest point of complete relief, and we already went over that definition. So here's a perfect example of it. Then we're going to get a 1 club length relief area. So that's our second R. And that relief area must be in the general area, must not be near the hole, and there must be complete relief from the interference by the abnormal course condition. This is a lot of words. Does everybody understand what that means? Is anybody confused about what they mean with that? If the player's ball is in a bunker and there's interference by an abnormal course condition, they may either take free relief in the bunker under 16(1)(b), except the nearest point of complete relief and the relief area must be in the bunker. So we're going to have to drop the ball in the bunker. And as you can see in that picture, you might not get that full 1 club length relief area. It might be a little less. If there's no such nearest point of complete relief in the bunker, the player may still take this relief by using the point of maximum available relief in the bunker as the reference point. And the reference point for taking free relief from an abnormal course condition in a bunker and a putting green when there's no nearest point of complete relief is the estimated point where the ball would lie that is nearest to the ball's original spot, but not near the hole in that spot in the required area of the course, and where the abnormal course condition least interferes with the stroke the player would have made from the original spot if the condition were not there. So I hope that never happens to you all. But again, I think Andy said we might ask you to check bunkers out. If you come across a bunker like this where there's no area to take relief most of the time in tournaments, we will just take that out of play if we can, if we need to get the tournament done. So hopefully you never come across this, but it's a good one to highlight in your rules book. Again, estimate the reference point requires the player to identify the club they're using, the stance, the swing, and line of play. So if they're playing right-handed, left-handed, we want them to just do their normal stance there. And they don't have to simulate the stroke. So you don't have to ask somebody to go there, get in, step in that puddle, and take their club in there and show us what they're going to do. We know that they'd be standing in the puddle. The point of maximum available relief is found by comparing the relative amount of interference with the lie of the ball and the player's area of intended stance and swing. And on the putting green only, the line of play. If we got to get a tournament done, I don't know how many worked a PKB event last month, or maybe it was 2 months ago, but they had 1 hole left and it started downpouring, and they made the players putt through puddles because they literally just had a half a hole left and there was no chance they were getting back out there. So this exact picture here, you're going to find them the area that has the shallowest area for them to putt through. So for example, when taking relief from temporary water, the point of maximum available relief may be where the ball will be in shallower water than where the player will stand, or where the ball is in deeper water than where the player will stand. Or on the putting green, it might be the point of maximum available relief might be where the ball will go through the shallowest or shortest stretch of temporary water. And I'm telling you, when we want to finish a tournament, sometimes this might happen. This has happened. We don't want it to, but. So penalty relief for playing outside the bunker. So if you want to, this is an option for abnormal course condition in a bunker. For 1 penalty stroke, the player may drop the original ball or another ball outside the bunker, keeping that spot of the original ball between the hole and the spot where the ball is dropped. So if they're like, I don't even want to deal with this, I can barely play out of the bunker as is, and now I got puddles all over here, I'm just going to take my 1 shot and come out here. And they can do that. And the spot on the line where the ball first touches the ground when dropped creates the relief area. So that's where they're going to drop. It has to stay within 1 club length of where it dropped on that line. But these limits must not be nearer the hole than the spot of the original ball. Must be in the area of the course. It must be in any area of the course except the same bunker, because we're taking that 1 shot to get out. And it must be in the same area of the course that the ball first touched when dropped. So you're dropping in the general area there, it can't roll into a penalty area. If a player's ball is on the putting green and there's interference by an abnormal course condition on the course, the player may take free relief by placing. So on the green, we're going to place it on the ridge, and you can place the original ball or another ball on the nearest point of complete relief. And here's your procedures for placing. The nearest point of complete relief must be either on the putting green or in the general area. So this is a tricky one. And this will be on your rules test, but you might come off the green here and have you place it right over here. So even though that's not on the putting green, that's a different area of the course. That's the general area. That's where you're going to go. Perfect. We got them back in play. Let's go. And if there's no such nearest point of complete relief, as you saw in that picture earlier, we're going to use the maximum available relief and putt through the puddle. We will try, just for you young new officials, we will try to squeegee and get it out of the way the best we can, but sometimes we just got to finish. So relief for a ball not found, but is in or on an abnormal course condition. If a player's ball has not been found and is known or virtually certain that the ball came to rest in or on an abnormal course condition. Here comes the ball flying right in there. Spectator saw it go in that tiny hole, but never could find it after this. The player may use this relief option instead of taking stroke and distance relief. And this relief option is going to be, the player may take relief under 16.1B, C, or D, depending on where they're at. Use the estimated point where the ball last crossed the edge of the abnormal course condition on the course as the spot of the ball for the purpose of finding the nearest point of relief. So we saw it go in, but we don't know where it's at. We're going to use point X right there, determine the spot where the ball last crossed. And that's where we're going to start with our nearest point of complete relief. Once the player puts another ball in play to take relief this way, the original ball is no longer in play and must not be played. And this is true even if it is then found on the course before the end of the 3-minute search. But if it's not known or virtually certain that the ball came to rest in or on an abnormal course condition, the ball is lost, the player must take stroke and distance relief. So we have to know it's in there. In each of these situations, the ball must not be played as it lies. And that's when relief when the ball is in a no play zone. So I'm going to touch on no play zones outside the penalty area. Maggie's going to touch on them inside the penalty area. But so we don't want them banging up this flower bush here. We're going to call it a no play zone on the rule sheet. So relief when a ball is in no play zone anywhere on the course except penalty area. If the player's ball is in a no play zone, in or on an abnormal course condition, in the general area or in a bunker or in the putting green, in the no play zone in the general area, the player must, that's a must, take free relief under 16.1B. If the no play zone is in a bunker, the player must take free relief or penalty relief under 16.1B or 16.1C, 1 or 2. And if the no play zone on the putting green, I hope that never happens. Man, I don't. The player must take free relief under 16.1D. So relief when no play zone interferes with stance or swing. If a player's ball is outside a no play zone and is in the general area in a bunker or the putting green, and a no play zone interferes with the player's area of intended stance or an area of intended swing, the player must either take relief if allowed under Rule 16.1B, C, or D, depending on whether the ball is in the general area, in the bunker, or the putting green. Or they can take an unplayable ball. And Nick will cover that here a little bit later. So for what to do when there's interference by no play zone or in a penalty area, like I said, Maggie will cover that later on. Any questions? No questions. Everybody's hungry. No questions. I mean, this is the main rule that you guys do when you're out there in the course. I mean, how many officials would agree with this in penalty area? You're probably 90% of what you do is free relief and penalty area relief. So find their nearest point, be nice to them, but don't give them their nicest area, nicest point. Okay. Nothing? Oh, all right. Dangerous animals. You can do what you want with dangerous animals. We have a gentleman in this room that stuck his hand in a fire ant hill. I'm not going to call him out, but a dangerous animal condition exists when a dangerous animal, such as a venomous snake, and we all joke they're all venomous, stinging bees, alligators, fire ants, or bears, which Maggie and Rusty are going to run our mid-am up there in the mountains, and their logo of the club is a bear. So I'm assuming you better study your bear rules, Rusty. So exists when dangerous animals near a ball could cause serious physical injury to the player if they had played the ball as it lies. A player may take relief under 16.2B for interference by dangerous animal conditions, no matter where his or her ball is on the course. This rule does not apply to other situations on the course that could cause physical harm. So poison ivy, cactus. I hate poison ivy. I'm allergic to it, but they don't give me relief from it. When there's interference by a dangerous animal condition, so when a ball is anywhere except penalty area, the player may take relief under 16-1B, C, or D. So you just got to remember those, depending on whether the ball is in the general area, in the bunker, or the putting green. And it's going to be free relief. And your reference point, you can make sure is going to be in the general area if it's in the general area. Except that the nearest point of complete relief in the relief area must be in the penalty area. So if you're in the penalty area and there's an alligator and your ball is up next to the alligator, you have to stay in the penalty area. Does that make sense? Player may take free relief or penalty relief. So you can just go ahead and say, I'm done with all this madness. I'm just going to drop outside the red line. And then I think this goes on to say, if there's interference by a dangerous animal condition where the ball would be played after taking this penalty or relief outside the penalty area, the player may take further relief. So your ball's right up next to an alligator. You come up, you say, no, sir, I'm just going to drop outside the red line. You drop outside the red line. And you say, this thing is still too close to me. We'll give you free relief a little further away. Again, if you're acting crazy out there, clearly unreasonable, we're not going to give you relief, clearly unreasonable situations. Any questions on dangerous animals? Again, if I see an anthill and their ball's in it and it's a pretty big mound, I'm probably going to consider that to be fire ants. But that's up to the official that's there. You can poke it with your radio, your foot if you want, and see if it's active. But I typically see a big one, I'm going to give relief from it. So, all right, 16.3 embedded ball. Ball must be embedded in general area. That was a change that we beat the RNA out over here. So it's in the general area now. And how to determine if it's embedded when a player's ball is in its own pitch bar made as a result of the player's previous stroke and where part of the ball is below the level of the ground. So here you can see that is embedded. A ball does not necessarily have to touch the soil to be embedded. So here in the Bermuda rough, sometimes that Bermuda rough's nice and thick. So it might not be touching the soil, but it is embedded. Ball must be embedded in general area when you're taking relief. So relief is allowed under 16.3B only when a player's ball is embedded in the general area. There's no relief under this rule if the ball is embedded anywhere except in the general area. So here you have bunker or sandy area embedded, no relief. And the gentleman looking for their ball in the penalty area, no relief. But if the ball is embedded on the putting green, the player may mark, that's pretty obvious. The player may mark the ball on the putting green, fix it, and replace it. So exceptions when relief is not allowed for a ball embedded in general area. There's no relief under 16.3B when the ball is embedded in sand, and that happens a lot around here. That is in part of the general area that is not cut to fairway height or less. So you're playing number 2, you're all excited, playing Pinehurst number 2 for the first time. You hit a high flyer, miss the green, and it looks like this. We're playing that. Should have paid more money. When playing the ball as it lies, it's again clearly unreasonable. We're not going to give you relief from an embedded ball under a tree. I don't know how you did that, but we're not giving you relief from that. And internal definition of a player's ball is embedded only if it's in its own pitch mark. And there's some old school videos of some wet PGA Tour events where they show somebody's ball bounce a couple times and then ends up in a pitch mark from a previous group. Sorry. It's got to be in its own pitch mark made as a result of the player's previous stroke. And part of the ball has to be below the level of the ground, as we stated earlier. Determining whether the ball is embedded or not, if the player cannot tell for sure, and we do this a lot, you can, whether the ball is embedded in its own pitch mark. Or another one, the player may treat the ball as embedded if it's reasonable to conclude from any available information that it is in its own pitch mark. So right here, there's really no other pitch marks around. My ball's got to be embedded. Ball is not embedded if it's below the level. I'm sorry. A ball is not embedded if it is below the level of the ground as a result of anything other than the player's previous stroke. So just because she steps on her ball here and now she comes and says, well, my ball is embedded. Well, no, your lie was altered and you did it. So we got you for a penalty stroke and we need to figure out what to do next. So When a player's ball is embedded in the general area and relief is allowed under 16.3, the player may take free relief by dropping the original ball or another ball in this relief area. So directly behind where it's embedded, and you get 1 club length. So here's your reference point. There's a spot in the general area right behind where the ball is embedded. 1 club length, must be in the general area and must not be near the hole. And this one is this is important when they changed this a few years back to give you that extra club length, especially when you're up around the fringe where you see a lot of balls embedded. Always help the player out and say, I can get you closer to the green. I can't get you closer to the hole, but I can get you closer to the green with that 1 club length. And then here's the one they threw in there when they started seeing embedded balls kind of just above the bunker. So when a player is allowed to take relief from a ball embedded in the general area, there are situations where the spot immediately behind where the ball is embedded is not in the general area. When this occurs, the relief procedure requires the player to find the nearest spot in the general area that is not near the hole to the spot immediately behind where the ball is embedded, and this spot becomes the reference point for establishing the relief area. And I think they said in our rule school that the official here, I don't know all their names. He said somebody famous, but this was Tiger's ball, the PGA Championship, and he hit a terrible shot and embedded right here. Previous stroke, we know it's embedded. It's below the surface of the ground. They just determined this grass right here was actually directly behind, but just if this grass was cut, then we wouldn't have that reference point. So they would just say, find your nearest spot in the general area. Well, this spot is normally very close to the spot behind where the ball is embedded. It could be some distance away. So this is a long way of wording that we're going to help you out. We're going to find a place for you not to have to drop there in the bunker. And we do want to give you relief. So here's the scenario. It's a good picture here. Ball's embedded right here, just above the bunker. Here's your reference point. It's going to be it might be just right here, just outside the bunker, and then we're going to get the 1 club length. Okay, so lifting to see if we get relief. So if a player reasonably believes that their ball lies in a condition where free relief is allowed, but they cannot decide that without lifting the ball, we're going to allow them to the player may lift the ball to see if relief is allowed, but the spot of the ball must first be marked and the lifted ball must not be cleaned. So here in this scenario, Tiger's not sure. He's showing the rules official, all right, let me mark it. And they'll probably just hold it kind of nice out to the side, unless they're Patrick Reed. They'll probably clean it. If the player lifts the ball without having this reasonable belief, they will get a 1-stroke penalty. And then again, except on the putting green, because you can mark the ball in the putting. If relief is allowed and the player takes relief, there's no penalty. So if you lift your ball off the cart path because you think you get relief from the cart path, but you didn't mark it first, and then you end up taking relief, we're good. If relief is not allowed, though, so you lifted your ball because you thought it was embedded, and it's not embedded, then, and you didn't mark your ball first, then you are going to get a penalty.